It's time for
DodgerHeads.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the DodgerBlue.com YouTube channel and podcast presented by Prize Picks. My name is Matthew, and joining me for this live episode of DodgerHeads is not only Anthony, since it's his usual Sunday night, but also we have Bruce with us as well, and I'm filling in for Fabian Ardaya, who, of course, is at the stadium tonight, and so I am pinch hitting. Anthony, I forgot you, relief ace, I think, is maybe what we established my role as at some point a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I like it. You get called in when it's needed, and you perform.
There we go. Thank you. I appreciate that. And for you, you're back to back. So our version of World Series MVP Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And if you missed it, Anthony and Daniel last night went live. What time was that? I was driving back from out of town. What, like 9:30? I think was when you guys started, or a little after 9. I think, right?
Yeah, I think so. And we went almost an hour.
Yeah, obviously with the Tarik Skubal trade and some live reaction. And so, Anthony, thank you for taking care of that last night. Bruce and I are excited to discuss the trade with you all tonight. And we want to thank everyone who is with us live on YouTube right now. We are doing this show, unfortunately, after another loss, and it was a series sweep. But Bruce, I think safe to say there's some bigger news here on the table that we're also going to get to.
Yeah, shucks, it was a sweep this weekend. Let's move on. I'm already done thinking about it because there's plenty more to talk about. I'm excited to be talking to Tarik Skubal, obviously. That all unfolded very fast yesterday. It felt like it went from maybe some hints that things were speeding up to all of a sudden the trade was fully done and official. So this whole thing has progressed really fast for Skubal to have been in the Dodger dugout today and everything fully official, and we've barely even had a chance to do the full breakdown yet. So it's going to be a good time to do that now.
Yeah, definitely. Unfortunately for tonight's show, we are going to touch on the Red Sox series a little bit, just because I feel like it wouldn't be responsible of us to not to completely bypass it, but it will be brief. And of course, we're going to get into all the discourse with the Tarik Skubal trade and also some new details that Andrew Friedman revealed today. And we do have Andrew Friedman's press conference up on our Dodger Blue 1958 YouTube channel. So once we are done here, definitely go and check that out. Give it a watch. We also have Tarik Skubal's first comments with his interview after he was traded with the Tigers were playing the Athletics up in Sacramento. So that, as Bruce noted, a nice little quick trip for Skubal to get down to Southern California here and be at the stadium tonight. And we're also going to discuss what might be coming for the Dodgers still before the deadline on Monday, which, as a reminder, is 3 p.m. Pacific. And then we're going to go over the latest updates on Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow, and Will Smith. Plus, there's now a Dalton Rushing injury that we're going to discuss. Before we begin, though, I do want to ask everybody who is watching this live on our YouTube channel to please hit the like button on this video, subscribe to our Dodger Blue 1958 YouTube channel as well. We crossed 103,000 subscribers this past week, so that was another big milestone, and we keep adding on seemingly, honestly, each month. And so a big thank you to everybody who is supporting us. Last bit of administrative business here. As always, we're going to end the show with answering your questions. But if you have something you want us to get to before then, Super Chat is the way to go. You guys know the drill by now. We'll stop what we're doing, put that up on the screen, and answer your question or discuss the topic that you have put on the table for us. And I see already tonight, Anthony, you're feisty. Not you, but people are getting feisty with you already.
Yeah, it's stupid. Like, the offense has been bad. We know. If you want to complain about it, but you don't offer solutions. Mookie Betts has been bad. I know. And I said in the chat, that contract has paid for itself. Like, the entire operation behind, Mookie Betts and with the trade and the extension is being fulfilled. It's been fulfilled. And and I'm not defending his current performance. I never said he's good right now. But you continue to be like, move off of Mookie. First of all, no one's taking that contract. Second of all, part of the reason players like Shohei Ohtani, like Tarik Skubal, like Blake Snell want to come play in LA, and some of these guys take less than market value, is because how they treat players such as Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. And so the second you guys start kicking people out the door like that, when they've done and fulfilled all of their obligations when they were brought over here and in the things that they were asked to do, that's the time when you start losing stars like the San Francisco Giants do. Do you guys want to be the Giants where they're strictly used as leverage in negotiations and they do not land anyone because no one wants to play in that organization. Players want to play in LA. And I think all of the dooming, especially at a time like this, like, oh, they lost the series to the Red Sox, the hottest team in baseball. They didn't hit well. They didn't pitch particularly well. It happens. Like the whole, like, oh my God, what are we going to do now? They just traded for Tarik Skubal. Like they are addressing certain things that they believe that are going to help them continue to win in October. And I don't understand like the whole, we're just doomed now because Mookie Betts can't hit. And Kyle Tucker hasn't been worth $60 million. They never said he should be. That premium was paid for the length of the contract and for the opt-outs. Not because they thought he was going to be worth $60 million in production. Like, I think all of the dooming and the complaining really puts a damper on what this organization has brought to you and brought to all of us, especially over the last 2 seasons, but basically since 2020 when Mookie came. And I think it's a real, like, it's just a real, like, damper on what it is and the privilege that it is to be a fan of this organization and how they reinvest into this roster. Because if you want to see the other side, think back to when McCourt owned the team or go be a fan of another organization and really see what it's like. Because right now, they're on a generational run in a lot of ways, not just success on the field, but in terms of the way they're trying to put an entertaining product on the field for their fan base. And if you guys can't understand that and you guys just want to complain about the players who are bad currently, I'm not sure what to tell you, man. Mookie has 3 rings as a Dodger.
Yeah, and I'm gonna put this up really quick. Actually, no, that was the wrong one from Mr. Buddha. Says just because you can't trade a guy doesn't mean you play a guy who is not producing. There's a thing called the bench. There is a thing called the bench.
Okay,
the reality is
then that means Miguel Rojas is your everyday shortstop, and you really want him taking 500 or 600 plate appearances a season. You're going to really see why he's a bench guy.
Yeah, be careful asking that question, Anthony, because I feel like tonight with the tenor of the crowd, people might answer yes. And then, yeah, I mean, at that point you would get, and I am somebody who I think Miguel Rojas has tremendous value in the right role. And to your point, that is not a starting job at this point, this stage in his career. Look, we on this show, we appreciate your guys' input and feedback, and we enjoy interacting with everybody. We also are not the show that is going to just let, I don't want to say outlandish, but maybe baseless might be the better, like claims and takes, sort of go without an actual discussion about baseball. If you guys don't want to have serious talks about baseball, then unfortunately, that's not what we're not going to do that. Like I think
I'm with you, man. I think one thing that I pride myself on as being a part of this team on DodgerHeads is that we have ball knowers that come on, like Bruce, extreme ball knower.
And when they don't know ball, like Blake, we don't let them on the show, right?
When's the last time you seen Blake on a live unless we had to?
Exactly. That speaks for itself. Bruce, real quick, just share some thoughts on the Mookie thing before we get into tonight's show.
I think the big thing with Mookie is he's in his age 33 year. And like Anthony said, the contract has been paid for tenfold with 3 rings already. And the way that he has ushered in this new era of Dodger baseball, he was like really one of the big turning points was his arrival, and all 3 rings have been with Mookie. And the other big thing is his move into the dirt was done specifically, I think, with this idea in mind that even if the bat slowed down, he's still a valuable player. Like if you take the contract out of it, if you take his name out of it, he's an everyday big leaguer right now, for sure. Even though the bat isn't doing well, he's one of the best defensive shortstops in baseball. And that's a guy that would play on pretty much every team. And that's with knowing that this is below the standard that Mookie Betts is going to be playing at, expects himself to be at, and the organization expects himself to be at. So the contract is paid for, and I think that there are places to direct criticism that would be better founded than at Mookie Betts, who, as a 33-year-old, has moved in and become one of the best defensive shortstops in baseball all of a sudden the second most premium position on the diamond. He is doing really well there, and you want the bat to be better. Obviously, he does too. But the Dodgers are winning, and it's not because of Mookie Betts that they aren't going 162-0. Like, he's still been a valuable player this year. He's certainly not an underwater, dragging the team down kind of thing because of how valuable that defense is, regardless of what he's doing with the bat.
Yeah, Norm is saying I'm out. Apparently, I don't know enough ball for this panel. So you guys, Norm, it's not so much that as it is. Let's have a nuanced conversation about things, and I feel like we have been pretty upfront on this. I know for a fact I have. I know Anthony has come around. Bruce, I'm not picking on you. I think you have maybe tried to be a little bit more hopeful. It might be the right word with Mookie Betts offensively. I have continued to say, like, with Mookie, it is what it is from an offensive standpoint. Like, he's not the hitter that he was in 2018, in 2019, 2020, 21. Basically before he fractured his left hand. Like, that, to me, for various reasons, is kind of the line of demarcation in Mookie's career from an offensive standpoint, is that hand fracture. And since then, he had the toe issue, he had the virus, he had the oblique, he had, getting on the wrong side of 30, if you will. All of that being said, he is still valuable defensively as a shortstop. And I understand the contract and things of that nature and all that. And I have one here. Norm was saying, look forward, not backwards. I completely appreciate the present, but the future is in peril with a number of these big contracts. It's reality. It's not complaining. Norm, I frankly, I'm not picking on you, but I disagree with this. And what's interesting is, Norm, I don't know where you specifically have landed on this, but I know that there was a rather large segment of the fan base, maybe up until the last 2 years when the Dodgers have won the back-to-back World Series, that were getting upset with Andrew Friedman for prioritizing the future too much, right? Am I wrong, guys? Is it safe to say that was a narrative?
That was the complaint then. Absolutely.
So now the complaint, and Norm, again, I don't know where you were in that specific argument, but Norm is bringing up, and Matt is agreeing with him. They're worried about the big contract. Guys, if anything, Andrew Friedman and this front office has continued to show they are capable of managing money, for lack of a better term. And yes, a new collective bargaining agreement, whether it has a salary cap or not, is probably going to change things a little bit moving forward. But I think also we need to understand that a lot of that stuff, the Dodgers will find a way to manage under new rules, for lack of a better phrase of saying it. Bruce, go ahead.
I understand where Norm is coming from about saying, like, look forward and not backwards. And I totally get that, because that's the way that the Dodgers are managing their team. Like, they in the decisions that they make in the present are about the present. And we can talk about the past, but that's not affecting the decisions they're making to win tomorrow. I completely understand that. But I just think that it's gotten lost in translation a little bit with Mookie's offensive struggles. He's grinding, and it hasn't been good at all. Even if the hope that you're kind of clinging on to is that he'll get back to league average offensively, I just think that there still is a misunderstanding of the value that he is still bringing as a player. He's not a guy that is impossible to have on the field. That's not even close. This has been as bad as his year could pretty much possibly be offensively, and he's sitting at an 89 weighted runs created plus, 10% below league average. Well, he's been one of the league's best shortstops. That's not an unplayable player.
He's still a +4 player.
Yeah, and like I said, this is as pretty much as bad as it could possibly be. And he's fallen back into a real bad slump, but there was a stretch where he was starting to turn it around. And obviously it's unfortunate that didn't sustain itself. But in order to act like the Dodgers should replace Mookie Betts, like you guys already mentioned, you kind of have to have a different plan in mind. Like, what would you be going to? And putting Miguel Rojas out there every day, that's not an upgrade. Like, it doesn't make sense to complain about Mookie when the Dodgers are still the best team in baseball, and they're making additions in other places of the roster, like Tarik Skubal, that shores up any of the shortcomings around, like, Mookie's offense. But they wouldn't get better by taking Mookie off the team or anything like that.
Yeah, I think too, like, you don't just have to only address your weaknesses. You can sometimes strengthen your club and put your club in a better position by strengthening areas of the team that you're already really good in.
Right.
And that's what they did with the Skubal trade. Like, there's not an answer out there to replace all of Kyle Tucker and Mookie Betts and Will Smith and anyone else who you think isn't performing enough. Teo, that's not realistic. They went out and got the best player on the market, and we're still dooming it. And the last part of that comment about the future is in peril, that tells me right there, like, I cannot talk sense against that argument. If you think the future of Dodger baseball is in peril right now, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I think any fan who watches this team and this organization would not think like, this is it. If you don't win it now, it's all downhill from here.
Yeah, I agree.
We just spent the first 15 minutes of the show doing this when just last night, they traded for Tarik Skubal.
Yeah. And that's where I was going to go. I think it's time to put a pin in some of that stuff. Again, we do appreciate the conversation. We want to have informed, nuanced discussions here on this show. That is something that we've always strived for. We're not going to sit there and, pound the table just because, it's maybe the cool thing to do right now. And again, all three of us fully understand that Mookie Betts is falling well short of expectations offensively. As Anthony noted, still a +4 player. There's value in the shortstop, the defense that he's providing there. And the reality is they are not winning or losing a bunch of games because Mookie Betts. So there are, other issues on the team. We do have a couple super chats here. And real quick, Mr. Classic says he likes Blakey. This is, of course, in response to my friendly jab about Blake. And I do want to make it clear that Blake knows baseball. Sometimes Blake gets some interesting, down some interesting paths that we like to give him a hard time about. And so that's all that was. We know that you guys like Blake, and we're going to need to get him on. It has been too long. We need to get him on here with you guys. A couple super chats from Frackman. It says, no excuse, Anthony, for not scoring with men on base. They're not losing by pitching. Stop your excuse. Mookie Betts does not win by himself. Stop it. Mookie Betts does not win by himself. He also does not lose. And Frackman, we have gone over this a lot. Look, this weekend was bad. I get that. Also, if you look up Dodgers offensive stats this season in a lot of different categories, they are top 10, if not top 7 in baseball type thing. That includes runners in scoring position, so on and so forth. Next one from Frackman. Red Sox are good. Should have won 1 freaking game out of 3. Fans have a right to be pissed. Been watching games before you guys were born. We get the frustration with the weekend series and getting swept by the Red Sox and so on and so forth.
It happens, guys.
I think there is also the reality that the Dodgers just traded for Tarik Skubal on Saturday night, and we don't necessarily we don't know. I will share some thoughts on Shohei Ohtani, down later in this show. The Dodgers, I think, are in a much better position today than they were yesterday, and I don't think there's any denying or arguing that.
Another huge fan base thinks the Dodgers are the favorites to win the World Series, except the Dodgers fan base, or at least parts of it.
That's true. How about we trade these negative-minded couch potato fair-weather fans over to the Padres, Giants, or even Blue Jays? Anonymous user with a big super chat from the top rope. We don't want to see any infighting amongst our followers, but yes, I mean, there is some merit to this, Anthony. I know this is a point you have often brought up of, look, you think things are bad, go watch X team every single night the way you do the Dodgers. You're going to come away with just as many complaints, if not more.
Yeah, I watch a lot of baseball. And what I do for Forbes is across the league. It's not just Dodger focused. This is the one time where I get to be Dodger focused, and I love it. But I've been a national writer since 2011. And so I see and pay attention to 29 other teams. It's pretty bleak for some of them. And even ones who are good, they're not this. They're not the Dodgers. Like, pick just about any playoff, like if the season ends today, pick any of the other playoff teams. And boy, those problems are deep rooted. And the Dodgers, they do not have those same issues because they're run differently. And this organization, may be better than any that I've ever covered, threads the needle of player development, using the money that they have at their advantage wisely, and just being absolute monsters on the trade market. Like, when's the last time like a significant trade that you could say like they lost?
I mean, there's the obvious one that sticks out, right, Bruce? I don't know. I don't need to say the name, but is there any other one that comes to mind?
I mean, Jake Fields didn't contribute very much to this organization for the AL MVP in Houston, but that isn't one that I think anybody should be thinking about. That was when Yordan Alvarez was like 17. That really didn't mean anything. I think that, like Anthony said, the simple truth about baseball, one of the reasons that I love this sport, and I think a lot of people love it for this reason too, there's no such thing as a simple and easy 162. Like, it just does not exist. It does not matter how good your roster could be. It doesn't matter how well your organization is ran. You're not going to get through 162 games without facing adversity of some kind. If it's injuries, if it's a random series where everybody just wakes up on the wrong side of the bed like this weekend, there's just no such thing as getting through it without it feeling like you need to look inward and wonder what went wrong at some point. And think about these last 2 years. In 2024, heading into the playoffs, it felt like the Dodgers had next to no chance. They had no starting rotation to really be trusting in. They just about lost in 4 to the Padres before they clutched that NLDS. Last year, it was the bullpen that throughout the season felt like the Dodgers were way underperforming. And then they won back-to-back World Series. So it's just kind of the nature of the game that it's never going to feel easy, but the Dodgers minimize those tough moments better than any other team in baseball, but those moments will never be fully gone. That's just how the sport works.
Yeah. Frackman's another super chat apologizing, saying, sorry guys, I know we were way better than we look. Hey, no need to apologize. Like, let off some steam and then let's talk about it. And let's realize that, things could certainly be a lot worse. The reality is there is not, as frustrated you are with Mookie Betts, there's not really a solution to bench him and then replace, put somebody there that would be a guaranteed upgrade. And that's all we're trying to explain and point out.
And the other thing too about it is, like, the Dodgers in the clubhouse, they're not happy either. Like, you can acknowledge that it's not like the sky is falling, but you can still be frustrated by getting swept by Boston at home. That's not something that the guys in that clubhouse are pissed right now. Dave Roberts isn't happy at all, because that's below the organization's standard, and you have to hold that standard all the time. Otherwise, you're not playing for anything. So it's completely fine and right to be frustrated by a weekend like this. The Dodgers are. It's just you have to keep the big picture and understand that it doesn't mean that the team isn't good, but it does mean that you have to look at this road trip and say, okay, we got to shake that off and get back to our standard.
Yeah. Another super chat from American Man. Oh, we got swept by the Red Sox. Bummer. We'll bounce back tomorrow. Anyways, Skubal. That was my editorialized, but there are if you're not watching, there are caps and a lot of U's in that comment. All right, let's get into some at risk of angering for getting everybody even more upset. Real quick, the Dodgers were swept, like we said, by the Red Sox. This is now their 4th 3-game losing streak of the season. It's the second time they were swept in a 3-game series this year. The first one, if you can think all the way back to right before the All-Star break, was the Diamondbacks from July 10th to the 12th. And that's when, similar to tonight, the sky was falling and the season was proverbially over. And there was nothing good for the Dodgers ahead. In all seriousness, the biggest issue from this past weekend, I think, is Emmet Sheehan. Another Emmet Sheehan start means another Emmet Sheehan discussion. And this time it's coming after he gave up 5 runs and pitched just 2 2/3 innings, 3 home runs allowed today to the Red Sox. Velocity was down. Anthony, we did a show a week ago after Sheehan's last start. We discussed, some of the good and bad. A lot of the luck, I think, is where we landed on, with it being the Mets. I faced, not necessarily a Red Sox team that is known for a ton of slug, if I'm remembering correctly, but certainly a hot team this weekend.
And they've been hot for like a month.
Where are you at with Sheehan right now?
I think as Skubal's here now, I think once Snell comes back, I don't think you can keep him in the rotation. There's some things to figure out here. He's interesting because his expected ERA and his actual ERA is there's a huge gap, and so it would say he's had some bad luck. but he's also had some really good luck. Like, he's thrown the ball horribly, maybe not horribly, that's probably strong, but like, he hasn't thrown it well against teams like the Padres and the Mets, and he got away with it. And tonight, he threw the ball the same way he threw it against those teams, and this team's better. This is a better lineup right now than both of those, and he didn't get away with it. And this is what can happen with him when he's pitching the way he's been pitching. And I think that, well, a lot of the peripheral and under the hood stuff looks pretty good for him. I don't think it's making a big difference right now. I think what that says is that he can be better at some point, like next season. I don't think that he's a guy that you stick with right now, given what Eric Lauer's given you, assuming he's still on the team, and with Skubal and a healthy Blake Snell back in the rotation. I just, he's the guy I would say, like, okay, we can pull him out for the time being.
Bruce, I know you've been pretty high on Sheehan, just kind of, overall, maybe not so much this season, but where his career looked like it was headed, especially once he returned last year. What do you make of what you've seen from him? If you want to focus on tonight, his last couple starts, or just this season in general is fine. But what have you seen that is, maybe the root of his struggles?
Yeah, I don't think that I even have to specify tonight or the rest of the season, because today was exactly how it's really gone for the entire year. It's been a full unfortunate season for Sheehan, where it's felt like watching him is the complete antithesis of everything that Justin Robleski has had this year, in the mindset, the aggressiveness to go right at hitters, looking like he's in control of what he's doing all the time. Sheehan just hasn't had that. And I remember on one of the broadcasts at one point, they were talking about how Sheehan was candid in talking with Dave Roberts about how he was pitching with the concern in his mind about trying to keep his spot and this super stacked rotation. And then those kind of thoughts were seeping in. And that's a tough way to pitch. And I don't know if that has continued. That, I think the main thing for him to focus on is the stuff has been so down compared to where it was last year. And he was a high octane guy that also had really good command. And that's a recipe for a really good starting pitcher. This year, he's lost the high octane stuff that he had. The velocity has just been all over the place, where it's been, if you look at the whole season, it's been down, but it's fluctuated in such a weird way. Between some innings, it'll be back up at 96, like where he was last year. Then all of a sudden, like, there will be days and innings like he had today where he's throwing 91, 92, and that just does not get it done. So I think that it's a hard thing to pin down. It clearly is for the Dodgers, because they haven't been able to find a solution. I don't think that they are worried about any specific sort of injury, because otherwise there's no chance they would have been running him out there this entire year, even as he's been struggling as bad as he has. I think if it is something on the injury side, I would think it's like a fatigue thing that they've been thinking they could manage. But either way, I think it's time for him to get a break, whether it's an IL stint, if it's down in AAA, I think that seems a little bit less likely. But right now, like I said, this whole year has kind of looked the same for him. And if it's sending him to Arizona and getting in the lab and trying to figure out exactly what's going on, they need to pin down what exactly is leading to the fluctuating velocity. Because right now, I think the more that they're running him out there, the more outings that he has, like today, the more damaged he's becoming as a pitcher, and the harder it's going to be to get him back to his stuff. I'm not selling my long-term Emmet Sheehan stock at all, because like Anthony said, I think a lot of what's been going on this year is stuff that you could fix in an off season. It's not crazy to think that. The way that the fluctuating velocity has happened, there's been innings that he's looked like, yeah, he's back to Emmet Sheehan, but then he'll come back out the next inning and the fastball's down 4 miles an hour. It's been a very weird year to try and diagnose what's going on. And I think right now, doesn't have to be that you're saying pull the plug on the entire season, but with Tarik Skubal added to this rotation, with Blake Snell pretty close to getting back, they said Eric Lauer is going to the bullpen, but if he makes it on the roster through the trade deadline, he can go back to starting in his place. Running Sheehan out right now instead of trying to really give him a break and dig deep into what's going on, that's the only chance that they'll have for him to be on the playoff roster. They need a extended break to try and diagnose the issue. Otherwise, he's not going to really have a chance to help the team in October.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think I've said this before. Every time we've discussed, the Emmet Sheehan situation, season start, whatever the case may be, I am inclined to agree with what you and Anthony said tonight. And Anthony, I know when we've been on, you've shared in the past that his velocity being down is not due to an injury. Because yes, I don't necessarily think the Dodgers would keep sending him out there if he was quote unquote like injured. That being said, I still remember them basically doing it with Tony Gonsolin. And he reached his incentives, but then he had Tommy John surgery. And I know that Sheehan doesn't have the incentives in his contract to get to, but I wonder, has he sort of been continue to pitch out of necessity in some regard? Because the velocity, I'm not inclined, maybe it's not an injury, but like you said, it's fatigue perhaps. And yes, he obviously has not been given any sort of break, whether on the injured list or down in OKC. So fine. I also don't think it's mechanical because, we've seen the Dodgers fix pitchers pretty quickly in that regard, and they haven't seemed to figure it out with Sheehan. I know that there was a brief stretch where he got it organized and all that stuff, but I don't know. I go back and forth. We can only go based off what Sheehan has said, what the Dodgers said, that he isn't injured, and so fine. Like, I don't want to think that they're necessarily lying, but I don't know if that is the reality.
Yeah, him throwing 91 and 92 with the four-seamer today is crazy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's where
it's so baffling.
The alarm sounding at that point, and it's not necessarily the alarm sounding of like a lot of people when you see the velo shot that hard, you're going to think that there's an elbow issue, something specific. I think for Sheehan, it's just whatever is wrong is not going away, and that part is obvious. I think, like you said, Matt, earlier this year, there wasn't a good reason to immediately shut him down because the Dodgers kind of needed him to be filling innings regardless of how well they were going.
And real quick, Bruce, he's taking the ball every turn and he's eating some innings. Like he's serving a role and a purpose on this current roster.
Totally, and it's not the purpose that they thought that he was going to be serving, but he's been an innings eater this year, so it's not like he's not been valuable in any way. He's not been the frontline guy that they were expecting him to be, and now that they've got Skubal, they've got Lauer still in the organization for now. They've got Snell about to get healthy. Glasnow's going on rehab. Gavin Stone's throwing in Arizona. It's not a necessity anymore to keep him in that rotation. So now they need to prioritize his development and try and figure out what's going on.
Yeah. Nobody tell Blake I said this, but this comment from a Blake Williams, I don't know if it's our Blake Williams or another Blake Williams, says it could be Sheehan struggling to make the change and not the Dodgers failing to find the mechanical issue. I think that's also fair. Like that, maybe for whatever reason, Sheehan just can't implement an adjustment that the Dodgers are trying to get him to for some reason.
That's where sending him to Arizona for the ability to pitch where it's not in games where you have to worry about other factors and be able to really isolate whatever they identify, if it's mechanical changes, be able to throw in a lower stakes environment, even just bullpens, and try and specifically attack the problem.
Yeah. To kind of close the book on the Sheehan conversation for tonight, Fabian Ardaya tweeted that Dave Roberts said the Dodgers don't have to make a decision right now as far as his role in the rotation, which certainly makes sense. But then Dave Roberts also said, quote, "When you're pitching in big league games, you've got to get guys out. I don't know where we go from here," end quote. So yeah, his time, like the writing is on the wall, right? And I know that this is a dangerous game, but assuming health, knock on wood, Skubal joined the rotation. Snell, we'll get into it. He's going to make one more rehab start, and then he'll be back with the team. Sheehan certainly appears to be on some borrowed time. We had a super chat come in. I apologize for the delay in getting to this one, JJ, but it says, "Man, you Fairweather fans in the chat got me messed up. Want to talk about Dodgers doomsdays? Go back to 89 all the way to 2004, then come talk to me." Yeah, look, there are certainly much leaner years where you could doom and gloom and would be certainly fully justified. And again, we understand you guys come here to vent, and we do. I think we want to allow a space for that to happen. And then we also want to have productive, knowledgeable conversations about the team, about players, about baseball in general, about movies. Me, of course, Anthony, the perfect food opinion guy, right? I think that's what we've established within our staff. So we get the frustration. So get the frustration out, and then let's have some productive talks. And I think one of our guys, BL Boyd, Says, I have zero beef with Anthony, which we know. I know BL and Anthony.
Boyd's a good regular.
Yeah.
I have there's no beef there. But we do go back and forth because I think this next part of it is part of the reason. Like we don't see eye to eye here.
Yes. BL Boyd adds, I just think that this runner in scoring position, expletive, I won't say it. You guys can read it. It's a family show here on Dodger Heads. Doesn't get enough attention and criticism. It's been going on for years. Last year's championship was a freaking, and he puts miracle in all caps. I do agree last year's World Series win was a bit of a miracle just because of all the improbable plays that sort of went in the Dodgers' favor. So I'm not going to fully argue there. But BL Boyd,
miracle implies they didn't pitch their ass off, though.
That's true. That's fair. BL,
they set themselves up for a miracle.
Yeah. BL, as we have tried to do in the past, when you bring us these criticisms and critiques, we want to make sure we have updated stats and information for you. And so, Anthony, what can you share about the runners in scoring position?
We did this last time with Ohtani. Okay. This is for my guy Boyd. Runners in scoring position, National League ranks. Weighted runs created plus, runners in scoring position. This season, Dodgers 112. One team ahead of them, the Brewers 114. That's WRC plus. Weighted on base average, Dodgers are second. Again, runners in scoring position. Slugging, Dodgers are third. Strikeout rate, meaning how often you strike out with runners in scoring position, the Dodgers are 11th out of 15 teams. I know that maybe they don't pass the eye test every day, but they're good. They're good. They're a good offense. They go through ugly slumps. There's no doubt about that. They hit into a ton of double plays, but the double play thing is a byproduct of they get a lot of guys on base, they create a lot of opportunities, and they don't strike out a lot. And so they put the ball in play. You're going to get more double plays. It's natural progression of things. It's how the world works. I watched this game today and got frustrated too. I watched this whole series and got frustrated. I watched the World Series last year and got frustrated with the offense. I'm with you. But the evidence is there to say like this is still a good offense.
Yeah. And Anthony, I saw you in serious drama going back and forth, and they're saying at least Anthony interacts with the chat. Kudos to him for that. Yeah. Again, we want to be a space for you guys to come talk baseball. That's why we do these live shows. We don't do it. So we talk offline amongst our staff about baseball, about a lot of things every single day. We do these shows because we want to interact with you guys. We do want to hear, like I said, your thoughts, your opinions, your frustrations, and then we want to have productive conversations about it. Bruce, anything to add on the runners and scoring position front and the offense concerns and so forth?
Yeah, I think part of why it doesn't pass the eye test is I do think there's a little bit of merit to say the Dodgers have not been as good as they could be in the productive outs category and in totally. Some of the margin stuff that doesn't show up on the stat sheet. I think that it's fair to say that there's been times this year it feels like there's room for improvement there, but certainly not the worst in baseball, that kind of thing. And when you have as much talent as you have in this lineup, a lot of that gets glossed over because the Dodgers are so talented that even if with nobody out and a man on second, even if they don't get that ball to the right side and move that guy up to third, the next guy in the Dodger lineup has a much better chance than other teams do to just get a base hit, and then none of it matters anyway. So the Dodgers make up for a lot of the any shortcomings they have with situational hitting by just being good hitters. They wind up producing anyway in that way.
Hepatitis is saying Tucker will have a monster September and October. So at the risk of further inflaming the chat tonight, I'm putting that up and reading it just because I have said this to you guys, like watch, and I've said it I think on these shows, like if Tucker has a crazy October or not, and if he just has one or two big hits in the playoffs and the Dodgers go on to win the World Series, not that necessarily all is forgotten for this year, but kind of, right? Like
kind of is.
I mean, who cares what happened in April?
Walk off, or you win a NLCS MVP or something like that. Like, yeah, man. Like, all right.
Yeah. Roz is asking, why can't we all be a happy family? Yes. Let's get back to that. And on that note, everybody, let's take a breather.
Celebration. Let's celebrate now.
Let's take a breather. Let's pause really quick so I can tell you guys about Prize Picks, which is the sponsor of our show. And if you're not familiar with the Prize Picks app, It's really simple to get started. You can use the link in the description of this video and podcast to download it and create a free account that lets you test your knowledge by picking more or less on a bunch of different stats and players across multiple sports. You just lock in your daily lineup, and there's now a new offer from Prize Picks where if you play $5 on your first lineup and win, you get $150 in free lineups, but you have to use the code HMA in order to qualify for that. So download Prize Picks. The link is in the description of this video and podcast. Remember, use code HMA. And of course, Prize Picks is only eligible to those who are at least 18, 19, or 21 years old, depending on the eligible jurisdiction where you reside. And we ask that you please make your picks responsibly. All right. In brighter news, more positive, uplifting stuff from here on out. Maybe we have some, Dalton Rushing injury, I guess, to weave in. If you haven't heard, the Dodgers traded for Tarik Skubal on Saturday night. As I mentioned, Anthony is I don't want to say you're taking a beating tonight, but you're active in the chat, so he's definitely, my Yoshinobu Yamamoto comp earlier in the show was accurate because he's doing it all for us here tonight. Bruce, you and I were on the live show last night for the immediate Skubal reaction, so I want to give you a chance to share with everyone kind of how that went for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a funny thing to talk about because obviously this is huge. It's one of the biggest trades basically ever in terms of the talent that's getting moved at the trade deadline. But it's another cog in a long history now of the Dodgers acquiring these superstar talents. And I think in a way that a lot of us have just become very desensitized to it in a way, because this is the kind of acquisition that pretty much any other fan base would absolutely not stop buzzing about for even a second, regardless of what is happening in the next day's game. This is massive. I mean, we've talked about it for a month on here. If there was one move the Dodgers could make at the trade deadline this year, it would meaningfully improve their World Series odds. It was going to be for Tarik Skubal. They had no reason to really be thinking about depth or adding a number 4 starter or adding a bat. Like, none of those things were going to make a difference really in this team's World Series odds. Adding Tarik Skubal absolutely does. Fangraphs had it as Skubal immediately bumping the Dodgers World Series odds by 5.5%. And when you're talking about World Series odds in an algorithm and computer simulations, like 5.5% is gigantic. That is a huge change. And adding Tarik Skubal to this already ridiculous rotation that's probably the best ever assembled now, and projecting a playoff rotation out of him probably pitching a quarter of the Dodger games, and then having the guys like Yamamoto and Snell and Glasnow and maybe Ohtani and all these guys behind him is just ridiculous. So the immediate reaction is it's another crazy good acquisition for the Dodgers, and it's another chance of the Dodger front office flexing their muscles and showing that not only are they the best at this, but they're the least scared too. They're willing to go and make these risks and make these additions because they aren't afraid of it, and that's something to be applauded.
Yeah, Anthony, I know you were, as I said, you were on last night with Daniel, kind of doing live reaction stuff. So I want to ask, and if you did also touch on this as well, I do apologize, but did you start to, maybe feel like there was momentum building towards the Dodgers trading for Skubal? Like, walk me through the scale for you, a week ago, what you sort of thought to maybe, the last few days until, it then happened in terms of likelihood.
Yeah. I genuinely thought the price, I thought they would not get him because the price would end up getting to a point where they were uncomfortable paying it for a rental. And I thought, I'm not gonna lie here. I thought that the Brewers were gonna have more balls and put it on the table for a guy like Skubal, who Bruce just mentioned significantly raises your ceiling for a championship. And I thought, obviously a team like the Brewers operates differently longer term, right? They really depend on their prospects because of the cost control, et cetera, et cetera. We don't need to dive into all of that. But their farm is as deep, if not deeper, than the Dodgers. And they could have dealt from that depth and still probably had a top 3 farm system in baseball and landed and put together a better offer for Tarik Skubal. and got him, and then been able to throw him and Miz in the postseason. And we've seen two-headed monsters of absolutely dominant starters win World Series. It's a proven formula. And I thought that they were going to get it to a point that Andrew Friedman and company said, okay, you know what? We're going to pivot to a Hunter Green type or something like that. I really did think that. And when they got him, I was shocked. My jaw was dropped. And when I saw the return, I was like, that's all it took. And not that Hope and Ryan aren't legitimate prospects. They both are. But I thought it was going to take more than that for, especially for a team like the Dodgers to get him, because I thought other teams would push them. And so in that sense, I was ecstatic about it as a Dodger fan. And I was, as a baseball fan, I don't know how you guys felt about it, but I was highly disappointed in the Brewers. I covered that team. I was a beat writer on that team in 2008 when they made the deal for CC Sabathia. And he totally transformed the direction of that entire organization. It was the first time they had made the postseason since 1981, and that was in 2008. Since then, they have gradually improved their operation to become what they are now. Best record in baseball last year, current best record in baseball right now, and a legitimate, chance to put themselves in that tournament every fall with the shot to win. Tarik Skubal, even though he's a rental and would have, been a heavy price tag prospect-wise, if he takes you to a championship, that organization never won one. That's all you need to say. And the fact that they stutter-stepped and just let the Dodgers go in and get him for that price, highly disappointed in that organization for that.
Yeah, I think maybe one reason they didn't trade for Skubal is the Brewers is because then they would have had a player on their roster that the national media knows, and that would have completely undermined Pat Murphy's messaging come October of, hey, we're the little engine that good with a bunch of nobodies. I say that, of course, tongue in cheek. I mean, my guess is ultimately the financial cost, Skubal likely being a rental type thing, dissuaded the Brewers. And Jay caught, yes, Anthony, 1 year off there, 1981, 1982.
82, sorry, there you go.
Yeah, misspoke, but yes, it was 1982. Either way, still a really long time. A week ago, 10 days ago, I didn't necessarily think that Skubal was going to end up with the Dodgers for a lot of the reasons you outlined, whether it would be cost and, just Andrew Friedman preferring, if they're going to sort of, they didn't end up emptying the cupboard, but if they were going to potentially do something like that, it would be for somebody who is under team control beyond this year. But I will be, once the Shohei Ohtani stuff started happening, I started thinking, okay, like maybe, this will becomes more of a possibility. And over the past, say about the middle of last week, I felt a shift like, okay, I think, there's enough smoke, enough reporters are putting out there that basically the expectation is Skubal to LA. So, and I know we've dealt with that somewhat in the past because the Dodgers have the resources, both financial and prospects, but something about this to me felt a little different. What I did not expect, to be honest, was that the trade would happen on Saturday. I thought if Skubal was getting traded, that the Tigers were going to drag this out until Monday. The deadline is 3 p.m. Pacific time. So while I did start to anticipate or feel, and no, this isn't me doing my LeBron James, I knew about such and such player, 25 years ago. Well, I did start to think maybe, a trade was more likely than not. I didn't expect it to come down on Saturday night the way it did. Bruce, you brought up a couple of good points in terms of the World Series odds and all that being impacted. And Andrew Friedman, that was something, he didn't cite that specifically. Well, he didn't cite FanGraphs specifically. That was where you pulled yours from?
Yeah.
So Friedman didn't name FanGraphs, but he did allude to basically the Dodgers, they're willing to make these big splashes when they see that there's a player who will significantly swing or impact their World Series chances. And that's what certainly Tarik Skubal is capable of doing. One thing that Andrew Friedman another thing he said was that Skubal was the only starting pitcher the Dodgers went after. And he admitted that they were, rather aggressive in trying to get him. He added all of that with the caveat of, as the Dodgers are sort of in discussions with the Tigers, he's not necessarily sure if their offer is going to be enough or where it's going to land. Dave Roberts also said it was basically Skubal or no one for the Dodgers in terms of, that kind of big impact trade at this year's deadline. So again, if you want to see more of Andrew Friedman's comments, we do have that video up on the Dodger Blue 1958 YouTube channel. So once we're done here, hopefully you guys are watching this live. And if you're not, if you're doing the replay, just hop on over to the video section of our channel and you will find it there. We have a couple super chats come in. The plaintiff 5450 says Andrew is right. Even if it's a rental for 2 months, if it wins, Milwaukee.
I think he's talking about me.
Oh, Anthony is right. Yes, if it wins Milwaukee a ring, it's worth it. They never have before. Take the risk. Push the chips in. Anthony, you have now you're synonymous with Andrew Friedman at this point in your career. Congratulations.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. We both know ball. Hey. But yeah, I mean, look, this is. I think. I don't want to get too much into the financial because there's a whole nother tangent of this conversation. But when you hoard the prospects like that, and hoarding is maybe the wrong word, because for organizations that are able to bring their guys up and they do produce and they do become everyday type of guys, that is worth something. And it keeps you at a certain level. And unless you develop like a couple of absolute superstars, it's really hard though to touch that ultimate ceiling. And so you're going to be probably a perennial playoff team, an annual competitive organization. But that's where you're going to sit. You're going to sit in the middle of that upper third of baseball. And maybe you get lucky one of those years and you make the run and you get to the World Series. Maybe you win a ring. But what that also does is it helps your ownership's bottom line. To go out and do a deal like Skubal, he's a rental, it doesn't so much hurt the bottom line in that way, where you're like paying Skubal $30 million. You're not doing that. I think he's costing right about $9 million for the rest of the season. But it gives you a legitimate chance, a realistic chance to win a ring, especially when you compare him with a guy like Mizorowski. It depletes your farm system a bit, but they're so worried about, well, now we have to replenish that because we're not going to be able to fill a hole by just signing a free agent. And that risk aversion is as big a problem in baseball as the teams who don't spend enough on payroll, like the Brewers. And I think that addressing that kind of thing is like, okay, when your opportunity is there, you can't keep saying only big market teams win championships when the other teams don't even try when they are at the doorstep. Any team could have beat the Dodgers offer. The Brewers could have done it easily and still had a top 3 farm system. The fact that they chose to do it, I think, looking back on it in like a decade, if they don't win a ring between now and then, you can look at 2026 as a legitimate missed opportunity for that organization.
Yeah. And we're going to get into the cost and the prospects that the Dodgers sent to, I almost said Milwaukee, to the Tigers in the Skubal trade here in a second. I do, Anthony, you're right. The financial aspect component to this trade is a whole nother conversation. And there is merit as much as we cover the Dodgers. And I bring balance to our shows, but even with that, we lean a little bit more pro Dodgers, certainly on here, than your national, your average national media coverage, which is, I understand. I don't think we have blue colored glasses on all the time, although some people tonight might really disagree with us because we were arguing what maybe tonight's the wrong night for me to make that claim. We recognize the Dodgers. We readily admit there are financial benefits to playing in Los Angeles, to the Dodgers having the Guggenheim backing, so on and so forth. One thing I think that our little show, if we can play a small part in spreading this message. The lockout after the 2026 season is happening, regardless of whether or not the Dodgers traded for Tarik Skubal. So this social media narrative, this push that you're going to start to see of, why are we going to play the playoffs and so on and so forth? Dodgers just going to win, yada, yada. First of all, we have been on, nothing is guaranteed, as great as the Dodgers look. Anthony, we were texting earlier, joking about how great the rotation looks on paper. And I said, well, Ohtani's not even part of it on paper. And so there was a nice little, some laughs there with that. But let's, if you guys, we want to try to, again, have an informed conversation on here. So I will ask everybody in here with us tonight. And if you're listening after the fact, if you hear people saying that now there's going to be a lockout, remind them that the owners were going to lock players out regardless of what happened.
The day that CBA got signed last time, there was going to be a lockout this time.
They put it in there. They set a reminder in their calendar that night. Don't forget to lock them out in 5 years from now. Yeah. Go ahead, Bruce.
I think that another part of it with the sentiment that's around of the Dodgers being so much better than the rest of the league and how, we just said this is the one addition they could make that would meaningfully improve what were already the best World Series odds. That 5.5% bump that I mentioned brought the Dodgers to a 30% chance to win the World Series. Yeah. That is absurdly high in baseball, but it's 30%, 3 out of 10. Like that's the nature of our sport. So to even think the statement of like not worth playing the playoffs or anything like that, I think that's the beauty of baseball. This is not the NBA where the Golden State Warriors, you could pretty much just punch their ticket to the NBA finals no matter what. That's not how baseball works. And so when the Dodgers are still going to have to go through a 5-game series in the NLDS, they're going to have to get through the NLCS. That baseball is a gauntlet and there's no guarantees at all. So I think that you have to try and stay within reality when talking about that kind of thing. You guys are totally right that MLB is going to spin this in a way to weaponize the anti-Dodger sentiment in their direction for CBA negotiations. They were already going to do that. This is just adding fuel to that fire, but that's not something that the Dodgers can control or is even worth worrying about. Trying to ignore it is the best way that you can try to keep that approach from working for MLB. It makes the Dodgers a lot better. And I think that when we're talking about like the Brewers not wanting to surpass the Dodger offer, it's a very interesting conversation because I've talked before about one of the reasons I think the Dodgers are so good and they're managed so well is they are always prioritizing the extended success. And the Dodgers, despite a move like this, are never pouring themselves all the way in on 1 year. It's why they have this dynasty. It's why they've been so good for over a decade now. And that is the correct way to manage in baseball. But there's a balance that you can strike. And the Dodgers are the best at striking that balance because they're unafraid to take a huge risk like this. I think for a team like the Brewers, like Anthony said, acquiring Skubal would have made – they're already a very good team. They already absolutely have a chance to win the World Series. They still absolutely have a chance to win the World Series. But acquiring Skubal would have put them right up there with the Dodgers of if you look at a National League Division Series or a National League Championship Series and you've got those two guys to start more than half the games, like you're in pretty good shape at that point and are toe-to-toe. They're not going to be toe-to-toe anymore. They'll still have a chance. But for the Brewers, clearly internally, they were not willing to say that going in on this season and taking that risk of potentially sacrificing some long-term was worth it in the long run for their organization. They think that there's a better chance to win a World Series at some point if they keep that window open longer. And I think that's a tough thing to argue. I think there's also a chance that like if the Brewers did acquire Tarik Skubal, at least speaking for myself, like I still think the Dodgers would be a better team. They'd be a bigger threat, but I'd still say the Dodgers are better. So it's interesting. It kind of boils down into a philosophical debate of like what's better to do as a front office, to pour into this year where they would be right up there with the Dodgers at that point. They still wouldn't be number one though, or to keep that window open longer. I'm still with Anthony. I think the sport is better when teams are always going for it and willing to make that kind of a move. But I do understand it from a perspective of, like Anthony said, we're not going to get all the way into this, but the Brewers don't have the financial flexibility to fill in depth. And so to keep that window open is a much more difficult thing for that franchise compared to what the Dodgers deal with, where they can sign a back end starter or a number 9 hitter for literally whenever they want. They don't have to worry about that.
I think, Bruce, I agree with everything you said. The one thing where I would say, I think for their thinking, in the Brewers' thinking, it would hold more water for me if pushing the chips into the prospect capital to get Skubal would have depleted their farm system to the point where it's like, okay, now it's just done. You better win now, or it's not, or you're finished. Looking at what the cost was for the Dodgers, If the Brewers would have just beaten that, they probably still have. I said top 3 earlier. I still think top 3, but let's say, low side. They have a top 5 farm system still after trading for Skubal probably. That's different. Going from number 1 to number 5 is not going from number 1 to 23rd.
Sure.
And so, the chance to acquire a legitimate superstar and not have to pay him superstar money for your playoff run, to me, that felt like a no-brainer, and that's why I didn't think the Dodgers were going to get him.
I do think this is a good segue into just talking about the prospect package and what the Dodgers sent back. I think that it has been a little bit underrated in the way that people are talking about this. I don't like the immediate reaction that everybody's had, like as if that the Dodgers paid nothing. We have talked a lot on this show. I've said it a lot over this last month. Anytime Skubal comes up, I've kind of felt like that a lot of the mock trades and the feelings that people had of what the returns were going to be were going to wind up being a little bit underwhelming, because ultimately we just saw proof of this. Teams around baseball do not want to part with controllable assets that are young and cheap for rentals. It's just not a good way to manage a baseball franchise. And when all of these franchises are managed based off of algorithms and internal evaluations, they don't ever make a move without running it through an algorithm to find out positives and negatives. This trade was, no matter what, going to be seen by an algorithm as a loss. The Dodgers lost this trade in that sense. It's just a loss that they're willing to embrace that other teams were not willing to do. But because understanding that, it meant that other teams are not going to be bidding super high to drive this price up to the point that the Dodgers were going to have to include a Justin Robleski or something. I think that once that name started getting thrown out, that was just crazy to me. Even Emmet Sheehan, I thought was a little bit beyond what the Dodgers are going to be willing to go. I think there's some people that have argued that Ryan is more valuable than Sheehan just based off of the season that he's had. And obviously today is hard to think about. But I still think, like I talked about it on Thursday, that I was clinging on to the hope that the Dodgers could get this trade done with River Ryan, Zahir Hope, and a third player. And that's exactly what it wound up being. River Ryan is a very, very good pitcher. And if he was healthy, he is immediately a mid-rotation arm. There's a lot of risk there in terms of the health. Had the Tommy John as soon as he came up in 2024, has had 2 hamstring injuries this year. He was going to drop down to number 7 on my midseason list, not because there's a lack of talent. He's top 2 in the system in talent, would have been. But the health is a real concern for me. So at least for me, I'm still thinking that the long-term potential of Sheehan, and he stayed on the field better, I'm okay with keeping that. The Tigers are gambling that they can get River Ryan healthy and keep him healthy, because if that doesn't happen, it's going to be hard to see this trade as feeling good for Detroit. But River Ryan is still a guy that every team in baseball would have been salivating over trying to get it into, because his ceiling is fantastic. The age thing does not matter. He's got 5 years of big league control, and all it means is that they get his absolute physical prime years for team-controlled cheap dollars. So that part means absolutely nothing in terms of the acquisition to me. Zahir Hope was going to be my number 5 prospect in my midseason update, but he's another 55 future value. If he hits enough, like if he just can make contact, he's an everyday right fielder easily, plus speed, plus power, plus arm. Like there's a lot of tools to just love with him. So I think he's a really good player, and that part's been overshadowed by just how good the Dodger farm system is. People pull up the MLB pipeline rankings and say, are you kidding me? This is like their number 4, number 7, whatever. But the Dodgers have so much talent at the top of the farm system that Zahir Hope would be most teams' best prospects. So would River Ryan. It's just the Dodgers have an embarrassment of riches in the farm system right now. And then Brady Smith is that, when I said it on Thursday, like a third player that's actually good. Brady Smith is exactly that. He was going to be flying up the rankings for me in the midseason rank. He was going to be number 14. Young guy, doesn't throw strikes, but his stuff is crazy good at like a 36% strikeout rate. So that's a really good third piece in the deal. What all that means is when we're talking about a rental, this is a really good package, the biggest package that we've ever seen for a rental in baseball, and that is really not even close. So it's not like the Dodgers got away with this without parting with anything, even if people were building up an unrealistic expectation and it didn't meet that. It does not mean that the Dodgers completely fleece Detroit or anything like this. It's more that this return, I think, brings people back to earth of this kind of a range should have been the expectation all along.
Yeah, Bruce, you're so right in that you look back at like the aces, like the real true aces that have gotten traded as rentals, and like this package back for Detroit is really, really good. It ranks up there with some of the best packages that we've seen in return. And my whole thought was that I thought the Brewers were going to go like, you know what, we're going to flex it this year. This is the year with Mizorowski pitching how he's pitching. And all of that, we're going to go get home field and yada, yada, yada. I thought they were going to do it. And they were going to drive the price up to a point that, you know, like it was going to be an overpay. And I thought that was going to, you know, bring Andrew Friedman and company to a point where it's like, okay, yeah, we're not messing with that anymore. I thought the Brewers were
about that life.
I thought they had more balls.
There's a factor here too that is I think an elephant in the room that's important to acknowledge, that it's a lot different when we're talking about a starting pitcher that had elbow surgery this year. Like that is a very important part of this too. I think that teams were afraid of injury risk, and that's obviously just something that you can say from the outside without really having seen like scans or anything like that. That's a hard thing to diagnose just from the outside of the organization.
For sure.
But I think if you're a team like the Brewers, like the Rays, that you're having to consider a lot of factors that the Dodgers don't necessarily have to be afraid of in the same way. The worst thing that you could imagine for a team like Milwaukee is trading top 30 prospects in baseball, really taking some of the best guys in that farm system, and then having Skubal get hurt. That is a much worse case scenario than just letting him go somewhere else. And I think that chased some teams off. If he hadn't had the elbow surgery this year, wouldn't be surprised if teams were significantly more willing to drive that price up. And then I think you'd get into the territory, like you said, Anthony, where I think the Dodgers would have not been willing to get in those kind of bidding wars. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if a lot of it came back to the elbow being a reason that the bidding didn't get to a place that the Dodgers had to back out.
That's a fair point, Bruce. And I think that I think for me, had he made, you know, because his first like 3 starts or so were just like after the surgery, we're like, okay, what's the rest of this season going to look like? If it were around that point, I think that like I'd have been like, yeah, okay, I understand that from the Brewers' perspective. But like his last 6 starts, he's got a 1.95. Yeah. And I thought that was enough of a sample to tell everybody, like, look, you don't need this guy to be healthy for 3 years. You need him to be healthy for 3 months. And I thought that was enough of a sample, like where essentially that the health concern with that elbow was kind of nil.
And that's where it's hard for us on the outside to speculate, you know, because
Totally.
that could be something that's going around in league circles that maybe the Tigers weren't totally thrilled with what the elbow looked like even when he was back. And I think that's where you also just talk about, even independent from the surgery this year, how different pitcher evaluation, especially these high octane guys, is just in a general sense. Like I think we're going to see the same thing in free agency where, you know, Tarik Skubal's, 29, very top of his game. Yeah. And he's not going to get one of these deals like all the position players have been getting, because teams are absolutely terrified to pour all of their resources into a pitcher that it feels like could get hurt at any time. And I think a similar kind of thing happened here, even considering that it's just a 2-month rental and all of that. I still think that probably was part of the calculus for a lot of these teams that have to be afraid or are choosing to be afraid of parting with assets for and taking that kind of a big risk.
Or
Couple things,
basis.
Sorry, go ahead, Anthony, one more time.
I said, Bruce, those are totally valid points. I think it's also a built-in excuse for some of these organizations to not go all in.
Totally.
Yeah.
And they'll sell their fan base on it.
Yep.
And then their fan base will go, yeah, we're smart not to do that. Screw the Dodgers.
That's where it's a difference between there's a partial willingness, there's a part that's like can't. But this is where the Dodgers are taking a risk too, and they know that. It's not like that just because the Dodgers are so talented that there's no risk involved for them. If Tarik Skubal got hurt for LA, that would still be an organizational, from a front office perspective, that would be a catastrophe to trade these three guys and then have him get hurt. It's not like that doesn't apply to LA. It's that LA has proven they're willing to go out and take this kind of a risk and be aggressive in a way that other front offices haven't proven.
Yeah, high risk, high reward. And I think the best thing to happen for teams like the Brewers, the Rays, whoever else might have been in this for the school. For
Braves
school,
were mentioned at some point.
The Braves,
Cubs,
Phillies, Yankees.
Is that the Dodgers got him?
Right.
Because now you can turn all the focus on the big bad Dodgers as opposed to your own unwillingness to go and put it on the table for that guy.
Yeah, being mad that the Dodgers
if the Braves would have got him, or if the Rays would have got him, it would have been much harder for the Brewers, or vice versa, right? If the Brewers would have got him, it would have been much harder for the Braves or the Rays to tell their fans, oh yeah, we didn't want no part of it, or we couldn't beat that because the fact that the Dodgers are the ones that got him, everyone can now turn their sights for their fan base on LA and go see those big bad Dodgers who are ruining baseball.
It all ties back to money in the end in some way, but still being mad at the Dodgers for having all the money that they have is different than being mad at the Dodgers for being willing to take a risk. The Dodgers are just bold. I think that's a different thing. It all connects back, but it's still a different thing than being mad that the Dodgers have financial flexibility.
Yeah. A couple of things, Anthony, on that point you were expressing. We had this comment come in earlier from Nicole Taylor, but I think it applies to what you just said. The Dodgers as an organization spent the latter part of the decade building a machine while people made our guys a running joke. Now they want to whine and cry about it. I think that's true, right? Like we've brought it up before. How many years were we hearing and seeing and reading about the Dodgers being chokers and so on and so forth? And yeah, now it's hey, they're the ones ruining baseball, when never mind the fact that TV ratings are up, attendance, and this is not just the Dodgers, league-wide. Attendance is up. The World Series last year was one of the most watched World Series ever, especially Game 7. And this is something that Clayton Kershaw said last season of, look, if you want the Dodgers to be a villain, fine. He argued that villains are good for sports. And I think that there is merit to that.
Yeah.
People are either tuning in to try to see the Dodgers make history, or they're tuning in to watch them fail.
And this organization has made the blockbuster deal, right? Manny Machado, Scherzer, and Turner, like they've gone out and they've taken big swings, and they've also
then flamed out those years.
Flamed out in those years, and to that comment's point, though, there was the Lance Lynn year, right? And like, there were years where like everyone was pissed because they didn't do anything at the deadline to help a team that might have been in first place and was going to win the division, but they made calculated risk analysis and decided like we don't want to do that. And now that the championship window is very open, they're doing everything they possibly can to squeeze as many rings through it as they can. And this is what Skubal was about. The other thing I wanted to say too was, and Bruce maybe can speak to this better than I can, but I'll bring up the topic in that there's a lot of chatter online right now about the Dodgers having overrated prospects. And we won't get into all the conspiracy theory stuff because that's completely effing ridiculous. But the whole idea of like the Dodgers don't produce anyone, like none of the Dodgers prospects ever pan out. You can go through a whole list of guys who have been productive major leaguers just in this Guggenheim regime that don't play for the Dodgers anymore. One thing though I didn't see anyone bring up is that it's very possible that one of the best player development organizations in baseball, the Dodgers, can take a guy, make him a legitimate prospect, trade him to a team that doesn't have as good of a player development structure, and then that guy starts to lose it and starts to flame out and doesn't develop into what you thought he was going to be while he was with the Dodgers. That's not overrating Dodger prospects sometimes. Sometimes that's just you went from a team that's really, really good at developing young players to an organization that's not.
Yes, that is 100% true. And it's a factor that people fail to consider, that it's not just minor league development that matters. Front offices, certain teams are better at making major leaguers good and reach their peak than others. And that's happened a lot with the Dodgers trading guys away while they're on good trajectories, and then they falter with other teams. And part of it is just that there's no such thing as a sure prospect. And the Dodgers have just as high of a miss rate as every other team in baseball. I think, like, you see people posting screenshots of former top prospect lists and things for the Dodgers. You could go through any team And
Every
there would
organization
be
has that
so
risk.
many misses everywhere because that's just the nature of baseball. The Dodgers also, I think, it gets glossed over that even if there have been number ones and number two prospects in the systems and all of that have failed, just like every other organization has, the Dodgers have had more guys that are nowhere near the top 100 prospect list that develop into good big leaguers than any other organization. And you can say that with a whole lot of confidence. The Dodgers do a great job on player dev. Obviously, the Dodgers are not paying off prospect raters to rank their prospects even higher because
Are we sure about that, Bruce? Are like have you done
I
forensic
can show off my
analysis?
bank accounts.
Yeah,
I wish
Bruce,
the
where's your
Dodgers
check at?
were funneling me money. It would make my rent a whole lot easier to pay, but that hasn't happened yet. I'll keep my fingers crossed for a new memo. But yeah, the Dodgers do a great job with player dev, and a trade like this is a perfect example of it. River Ryan was acquired for Matt Beatty, a roster trim trade that they had no place for a guy, and they went and identified River Ryan, grabbed him before he had thrown a pitch as a professional. The Padres signed him, and he was a position player there. And the Dodgers said, we really like this college data. We've got a guy who's not going to make our roster, have to get rid of him. Let's just go get this guy and see what we can do with him. You develop him, and now he's the frontline piece in a trade like this. Michael Busch was the same kind of thing, and Busch has gone off and become a very good, productive big leaguer. But Dodgers didn't have a place for him, shipped him off to Chicago. They got Zahir Hope and Jackson Ferris back, and now they can use Hope in a trade like this. This is not just the only example of it either. The Dodgers have done this a lot, trading for prospects from other places. They bring them in, make them better, and then ship them off again. And it's an interesting thing that I think the Dodgers, a lot of times they've identified their guys in the draft or the international signing process, and they kind of hold on to those guys a little bit tighter. Whereas I've noticed some of the guys that they'll identify from other organizations, trade for, they almost treat them like a stock that they can invest in for a little bit and then sell once they get up to their peak value, that the Dodgers are ready to cash in those chips. But they've definitely built a track record of doing that. Josiah Gray was like that in the Mookie Betts trade. Like there's been so many of these examples of it. And I think that the Dodgers, we've said they're the best front office in baseball. It's because of all this kind of stuff that they do. They still have a fantastic farm system. We just finished saying that Zahir Hope was going to be my number 5 prospect in the system, and MLB Pipeline had him as the 25th best prospect in baseball. So put those two things together, and you'll understand the kind of quality the Dodgers have. They made this trade. They're not going to feel the impact of it in terms of the farm system. And that does not mean that the return wasn't big, because from a value perspective, the Dodgers overpaid in a half. But the Dodgers are going to be completely fine in the farm system because there's going to be another River Ryan that they'll trade for when they have another guy. They can trade Eric Lauer tomorrow, and then in 3 years, whoever they get back for that, they'll go and trade for Ellie De La Cruz. So that's the nature of the game, and the Dodgers are great at it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great conversation, guys. A couple things I do want to just add to sort of sum this up. To Bruce's point and everything that he outlined, Andrew Friedman during the press conference that I have referenced that we have on our YouTube channel said the Dodgers gave up, quote, a lot of talent in this trade for Tarik Skubal, and more from Andrew Friedman. He said, quote, those guys are really good and have a chance to be really good major league players. But again, with where our core is at this moment in time, it was something we felt like erring on the side of aggressive made the most sense right now. The other thing too, Bruce, as you mentioned, the Dodgers farm system really not going to feel something like this. We have seen it in the past of this is how the Dodgers operate, right? They have a bunch of pitching prospects. Well, when they need to go and get somebody, that's where they pull from to make sure that position group in their farm system is still shored up right now. And Andrew Friedman did excuse me, I lost my train of thought. And in an interview with Rowan Kavner of Fox Sports last week, Andrew Friedman acknowledged that, yeah, the Dodgers have a lot of minor league talent, minor league outfielders that they're going to have to kind of sort through, and sort of hinted at a potential trade. And he said, whether it's this deadline or the offseason, like we'll probably have to address that group somehow. That's where Zahir Hope comes into play. And it's not necessarily a knock on it. It's not a knock on Zahir Hope that he gets traded. It's just, the Dodgers have other outfielders, and it's a give and take, right? Like that's who the Tigers were sort of interested in. That's, one, how you end up getting traded in a lot of cases. Another thing too with this that I thought was interesting, I came across Jonathan Mayo of MLB Pipeline. I thought he did an interesting exercise of ranking the top prospect hauls that teams have received in a trade. And Bruce, I know you already sort of expressed how you feel in terms of where this is for a rental. Jonathan Mayo, his applied to just any trade deadline deal, whether the player was a rental or under team control beyond that given season. He ranked the Dodgers giving up Ryan, Hope, and Smith as 8th on his list. First was what the Nationals received from the Padres when they traded Juan Soto and Josh Bell. Second was can't help but laugh. Second was the Rangers' return for trading Mark Teixeira in 2007. I'm not going to go through the entire list, but
that one changed the industry. That Teixeira trade changed a lot of how front offices approach these kinds of deals, and they said we're not doing that. That was sort of the okay, we've jumped the shark here, we're going to pull it back, and you've never seen another package like that again. That was ridiculous.
Are you surprised then that it was ranked second, considering that?
No, because the Soto package was crazy. AJ Preller is an outlier in that he's a lunatic, and so no. I mean, look what he gave up for Mason Miller.
Yeah, I was going to say AJ Preller probably could have. Jonathan Mayo's list could have been a top 10 of only AJ Preller. Bruce, your thoughts on that ranking?
Yeah, I think that it makes sense that the Dodgers, this trade isn't going to be number one because the huge caveat, like you said, is that the talent matters less than the amount of team control that the player has. Teams are more interested in control than they are in immediate talent for pretty much everybody except maybe the Dodgers, just because the Dodgers have the flexibility and they're bold, like we just finished talking about. They're willing to go after the guys that are going to raise the ceiling in the immediate present more than they already kind of have the longevity thing figured out. So the Dodgers gave up a lot here. I think the fact that it's even ranking on a top 10 list like that when it's a trade for a rental, instead of it being, dang, it's 8th and not number 1, it should be notable that it's even on this list when they're only trading for 2 months of a guy.
Well, we think.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, that's a important thing takeaway, I think, from this too, is that a lot of people are also getting angry because they're just assuming that this means that Tarik Skubal is going to sign an extension or sign back with the Dodgers in the offseason. And I vehemently disagree with that. The Dodgers are making this trade for the rental of Tarik Skubal, and it is a completely separate operation to see if they can keep him in LA, or frankly, if they even want to give him the amount of money that he's going to command to stay in LA. I also finished talking a little bit ago about the fear that teams are going to have about paying pitchers the kind of money he's going to demand and the potential with the elbow and all that stuff. When you're going to the table to make a trade like this from an organizational perspective, when you're having to evaluate whether it's going to be worth it, the value side of things, you have to evaluate the concretes. Like you have to be thinking about, we're trading for what we know we're getting, which is 2.5, 3 months of Tarik Skubal and that playoff run. And if you go to the table with even the thought in your mind that you're willing to pay more because you might get him in the building and talk extension and all of that, if you go to the table with that in your mind, the Tigers are going to wash you of everything you have. You have to be very firm in exactly what the goal is and exactly how much you're willing to part with. That's a firm boundary, not something that's going to move a little bit because you're thinking maybe we get more, and the Dodgers are at the table trading for the rental Tarik Skubal. That's it.
Yeah, this isn't the NBA where the Clippers trade Shea for Paul George, because that trade is essentially getting them Paul George and Kawhi Leonard.
Right.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah, I agree. That being said, obviously the Dodgers, I think it's safe to say, have done their heavy lifting here with the Skubal trade. What I want to ask you guys, do they still need to are there more moves ahead? I think we can agree that they're not necessarily done trading. I think where we might sort of disagree on is whether that's going to be subtracting from their major league roster, potentially adding to their roster, or at least maybe the high level of minor league, so the AAA. To me, I think this is going to be, I shouldn't say to me, I think it's obvious. There are two not groundbreaking. There are two areas that probably could stand to be addressed. People are guessing the bullpen I mean, there's Blake's guesses, but we're not gonna pay any attention to those. Blake, stop derailing our show, please. There's the bullpen, and there's the sort of pseudo, backup to the backup catcher, maybe, all things being equal. Anthony, if you needed to pick between those two, is there one that you are most concerned about?
I think here's what I think that they might do is continue to trade from the outfield logjam in the minors to replenish some of the pitching side of the prospect list. Okay. I think they could do something like that. If they were going to address the major league roster, though, I think it's probably most likely to be in the bullpen. I would say a backup catcher, but if they think Will Smith is on his way back, now I know they said 3 to 4 weeks to get back. That's a long time. So I think maybe a catcher could be in play still. But if they think that Will Smith's going to be okay, could maybe see a bullpen piece. But then again, and Blake just put this in the chat, in October, because of assuming health, because of the surplus of starting pitching, they may not need that bullpen arm because they're going to start moving guys like Roki and Robleski, potentially Glasnow, into bullpen roles. Maybe Glasnow and Ohtani's a piggyback situation or something like that. But it may not be such a need come October. And so, I guess maybe the backup catcher is a spot they really do want to address from a major league standpoint. But there's I'll say it this way, there's not a lot of need, realistically speaking, because we could say, okay, we want a better offensive shortstop, or we want somebody who's going to hit better than Kyle Tucker or Teo. Sure, but they're not going to bench any of those guys. So trading for those positions isn't realistic.
Yeah, I think that they still have some work to do, especially when you're talking about the outfield prospect situation. I think that they still have some moves that need to be made there, specifically in AAA. I don't think that they're going to get through tomorrow with both Ryan Ward and James Tibbs still in the organization. There needs to be room for Josue de Paul is ready for AAA. Mike Sirota is right there too. And I think they're going to make sure that they can get those guys up sooner rather than later. It also sounds and feels like they're very motivated to move Alex Call from the perspective of if the Rangers or another team are willing to part with real assets for Alex Call, I think the Dodgers would be absolutely silly not to be strongly considering that. Call's done a great job serving his role in the organization since he got here, which is basically play once a week and be perfectly happy with it and do a good enough job when he does get plugged in. But that's not a role that, in a baseball operations perspective, is providing very much. And if they can get a return for that, I think they could investigate that. So there's a couple ways. If they trade Call, they could maybe bring up Ryan Ward to be that final guy on the bench. Now that Kike's back, he can be the right-handed bat on the bench usually instead of Call. But I think that from the pitching staff perspective, they're probably done. They've talked about how the Dodgers go into the postseason envisioning the 14 best pitchers and not necessarily sectioning it out very much in terms of starters and relievers, and getting Skubal is adding to that list of 14 best guys. And I think that the push down into the bullpen is going to mean that it's already probably going to be a crunch. So I don't think that there are many guys that they'd be interested in getting. That it would have to be one of those ceiling raiser kind of things of a guy that they would trade for and know for sure they're making a huge impact in the postseason, which I don't think is out there. I still think that there's a decent chance that they trade Eric Lauer too, because even while we had that Emmet Sheehan discussion today, they don't need Eric Lauer down the stretch. Blake Snell's about to get healthy, and they added Skubal. If you're just making it a one-for-one kind of thing, then Skubal could take Sheehan's place if he's going to be on the IL. And then when Snell gets back, he can take Lauer's place. And Eric Lauer is not going to be a guy I wouldn't anticipate that they would shift into the bullpen, because he's just a different kind of pitcher. So the same way they traded Dustin May last year, if they can get a return for Eric Lauer that is boosted at all by the lack of starting pitching on the market, hopefully the starting pitching market starts to heat up a little bit here now that Skubal is off the board, and they can really have a sense of what they could get for Lauer. But I think Alex Call and Eric Lauer, if they can get back significant at all returns for those two guys, I think that they're going to be interested in that.
Yeah, for me, look, I'll and I just did a scroll right now on Twitter to see if there was anything. So maybe the fact that there wasn't is optimistic, reason to be not as concerned. I think they need to get a backup catcher, and need is a strong word, but like I think they sort of need one. Will Smith, look, as much as they're optimistic now, like, and this seems to be certainly the furthest along he's gotten in his rehab progression before, like, some his neck issue became flared up again. So I would say for now that he is past it, but if it is, an inflamed disc, like something like that is unpredictable, right? Like it's not a broken wrist that, okay, he needed the 4 weeks, the 5 weeks, the 6 weeks for the bone to heal, and now he's back and ready. Like, I worry that something like that could flare up. And if it does in the postseason, then what? Like, yes, Dalton Rushing is your starting catcher, and he has shown that he can handle that job. I think, there are times where, there's obviously still room for growth and improvement, which you would expect from a young player. But I think he's been fine. That being said, now Dalton Rushing is dealing with, the Dodgers did call it minor arm irritation. I didn't see anything from the beat guys tonight. So JRM is asking how serious is Rushing injury. I don't have an answer for you guys right now. Once we're done, I can, go back and see. Maybe Dave Roberts did bring it up during his press conference and he, downplayed it, and it's not going to be anything significant, which again, that is the initial report. But Anthony, Bruce, we've been here before where they're saying, hey, it's nothing. He'll be back in the lineup tomorrow or in 2 days. And then we've seen, it become an issue. So I think, and I'm not saying it needs to be, an all-star, a crazy caliber catcher, but we've seen in the past where they've carried 3 catchers on their postseason roster. And I think that would be a little bit harder now with, Kike and some of the versatility that with, Rojas. Like, I don't know who they would necessarily drop off. I guess some of that is also tied to Bruce's, and Anthony, you brought it up as well, what Alex Call's future is with the team. And I think it's certainly fair to expect the likelihood of Alex Call and Eric Lauer both being on the Dodgers roster after 3 p.m. on Monday is not very high. I think certainly at least one of them is traded. And so maybe if they do also move out, I think Eric Lauer is a safer bet, but if they do move Alex Call as well, if you don't get a backup catcher in that deal, maybe you figure out a way to get one later in that sense, and that's where your roster spot is. Don Kim says Vassay keeps talking about Travis d'Arnaud to backing up Will Smith. Is this legitimate? I have not heard this. I have not personally heard this from Vassay. What I do know is he's not one to throw out baseless speculation. So I would, and this, I'm not saying saying that this is definitely going to happen, but I think that there is reason that David Vassay would have mentioned that name specifically. Either the Dodgers have some interest or it's a possibility. And again, how serious that is, I think varies, but he's not one to fully speculate for no reason.
That'd be cool if Travis d'Arnaud got to come back and continue his illustrious Dodger career past one plate appearance.
Yeah, perhaps. Anthony, anything else you want to add to this conversation?
No. I think we hit on all the possibilities and all the machinations. I think, Bruce brought up a good point with Skubal and kind of how that, like, trading for Skubal, because look, the focus is October, right? Like, they can bring up arms and fill out bullpen roles for the next 2 months, but Skubal sort of is a bullpen ad. You put him in the rotation and then he bumps guys down, and so you, like I said, you might end up having a guy like Tyler Glasnow pitch out of the bullpen, which could be electric. So it's really interesting what the Dodgers are going to end up doing in that aspect, because if everyone gets healthy when they think they are, they're going to have a glut of arms, and they're going to have to figure out where to put guys.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's get into some updates, and these are going to be kind of quick just because we are already past an hour and a half today with the unexpected opening to the show tonight. But this has been a great conversation. We got past the friction, some of the tension, and now it's been nothing but smooth sailing since then. So some updates for you guys. As we mentioned, Will Smith started his hitting progression as part of his rehab a couple days ago. But as we as we mentioned, it is still going to be at least 3 weeks until he is ready to return. And Dave Roberts estimated it could also take up to a month. So, I mean, I do think at this point we're looking at September. Will Smith will be the extra position player that the Dodgers are able to add for the final month of the regular season. It's how I think it's sort of trending. Again, Dalton Rushing, if you missed it, was scratched from tonight's game due to minor arm irritation. We have not heard which arm that it is, and so I don't know again if it's his throwing arm or if it's his left arm. And as I mentioned, I did a quick scroll while these guys were talking, and I didn't see anything specific from Dave Roberts. So, perhaps it is truly a minor situation. Blake Snell is scheduled for another rehab start on Tuesday, and it's likely going to be his final one before returning. The goal is for Snell to get up to 5 innings or 75 pitches. Tyler Glasnow, he threw 2 innings in a simulated game last week. He's also beginning his rehab assignment on Tuesday, so I imagine he'll go through the similar progression as Blake Snell, 2 or 3 innings in the first time, and 3 innings the second start, 4 innings, and then we're looking at maybe him and, as I'm mapping it out, him and Glasnow and Will Smith will be the one extra pitcher and the one extra position player that you add to your expanded roster in September. Blake's guy, our Blake Williams, Blake Trinan, has faced batters twice and is making progress toward his rehab assignment. And if you don't get the reference, Blake was in here touting Blake Trinan as the big bullpen addition that the Dodgers are going to have at the deadline. So our Blake doesn't see reason for the Dodgers to go and make a trade on that front because you already have Blake Trinan at home getting ready to return. We touched on it. Alex Call, Eric Lauer, they seem to be some trade candidates here for the Dodgers, so we'll have to see what happens there. All right. We want to, we have decided we're an hour and a half past this. We're going to answer as many questions as you guys have. This has been a great show, as I said, after we got past the tension earlier. So if you could just start it with the word question in all caps, that makes it easier for Anthony, Bruce, and myself to pick it out. And while we're waiting for those to come in, let me remind you guys about another one of our sponsors, which is SeatGeek. It's the #1 rated ticketing app with more than 70,000 events listed. And it's not just games, but concerts, festivals, and more. Our guy Scott used it to go see Olivia Dean recently, who has suddenly become one of Blake's favorite artists as well. I know that he's pulling her up on his Spotify, or I don't know if he's just Spotify or Apple Music. What do you guys think? Is Blake Apple or Spotify?
He's a Spotify guy.
Okay, Spotify. Which one are you, Ant? Well, I guess I know. You're Apple guy?
Yeah, I use Apple Music.
Yeah,
me too.
Bruce? All right, cool. Yeah, Blake is definitely a Spotify guy. Then that checks out. Anyway, back to SeatGeek. Because they are the sponsor of this show, we have a discount that we can share with you guys.
You got to give them their Joe Rogan money.
Yeah, it is code DodgerBlue10 for 10% off all tickets on SeatGeek. As a reminder, it's DodgerBlue10, all caps, no spaces, and then the number's 10 for 10% off from SeatGeek. All right, let's get into some questions. As a reminder, we will focus on baseball, but if you guys have anything off topic, we're happy to get that to the end. I know, Manuel, you've been patiently waiting in here to get your food question off. So once you're ready, Emmanuel, just throw it in the chat and we'll be sure to get to that one. And not only get to it, but we will spend however long it takes to fully answer and get down to the details of it. The first one that I think is worth bringing up, because Bruce, you were alluding to it earlier. Let me find it here. Where did it go? Oh, did we not? Here we go. Nomo Splitter. What is the % chance of a Skubal extension?
This is a really interesting conversation to attack because obviously it's the first thing on everybody's mind. I think it's still very unlikely. I don't think the Dodgers are trading for Skubal with the expectation that they're going to be able to talk seriously about an extension. And that's where I said, like, the Dodgers were approaching the price of this, assuming that they're trading for the 3 months. And if an extension were to happen, or Skubal's camp were to be open to talking about it, that's a cherry on top. Like that's just can make a already one trade, hopefully, if everything works out, even better. But Skubal's a Boris client. That is not the MO for Boris to be signing extensions before free agency with his very best guys. The interesting thing here is if this was last year, I would be sitting here saying 0 chance, no way, not even worth talking about. But there's enough uncertainty with the expiring competitive balance agreement this offseason that there's at least some intrigue of we have no idea what free agency is going to look like. We have no idea when it even is going to be because the lockout's going to start pretty much like with the turn of the year. So I think that there could be some value from Skubal's perspective with the elbow procedure this year, with the uncertainty of what's going on, to get a big chunk of money immediately. But then also from the Dodgers side, there's no extension that would happen that is the Dodger formula that they've seemed to love to do of the low years, high annual average. I would think there's zero chance Skubal would sign an extension like that. For an extension, it would have to be what they expect to get in free agency of the peak of it, which I would assume to be like 8 to 9 years and well over $300 million. So very unlikely, but I at least wouldn't completely close the door because there's just so many unanswered questions and different ways that Skubal could be gearing up for free agency.
Bruce, do you have a percent that you want to?
Oh yeah, I completely dodged the question. That's my bad. I would say 3 to 5%, maybe 5%.
Anthony, what's your number? And then I have a kind of a follow-up related question I think you would be good to explain.
I think Bruce is right that if an extension were to get done before the end of the World Series, because that's the difference between an extension and him getting to free agency, is the Dodgers are the only team that can negotiate with him. For the privilege of doing that, they're going to have to pay a premium. That's the only way Boris takes him off the market, because Boris is the guy who's known for taking his clients into spring training without a deal, trying to extract as much as he can. So, I agree. An extension is highly unlikely. The only way I could see it possibly like craning its neck and the Dodgers, meeting eyes and saying, okay, let's have this discussion, is if there's a hint that the CBA could end up placing some sort of, because it's not going to be a cap, but some sort of limit on like contracts or money, and something that's not a cap, but like that could impact salary. Other than that, I really don't see it. I probably would have said like 10%. That's my percentage on it, but very unlikely, just because I think they're going to try to get the most out of this they can, because this is going to be his last contract. It's not like he's coming out and he's 26. He's going to be 30 soon, and he's not going to basically get a second contract that's huge after this. And so I think this is their one shot to get him that payday. I do think it can also be a situation where all ownership basically does a wink and a nod at each other and says, we know from the World Series to the time the CBA actually expires, there's a little bit of some time there. There might be a wink and a nod between the owners that says, don't do any business.
Yeah.
And so it takes anything off the table.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I agree with you. I'm probably at about 10%. So Bruce, you were at 3 or 5?
I said 3 to 5. I can say 5, but that's not 0, and that's where it's going to sound absurdly low to everybody. But last year I would say 0, and I wouldn't even hesitate. That's not 0.
And I agree with you. Under normal off-season circumstances, I would be at pretty much 0 as well. Given Scott Boras client, there's plenty of history there, but I do think that the CBA creates a little bit of uncertainty and maybe some wiggle room. And sort of related to that, Anthony, I know you answered it a little bit. Don't Care 187 was asking, what's the difference between signing an extension now or free agent contract at the end of the season? The biggest difference is if it's an extension, Skubal is not negotiating with any other team. You're not allowed to. So he can't go to the Cubs and say, hey, what do you guys, let's talk a new contract, and then take that back to the Dodgers and say, here's the number to beat. So it is an advantage to the team if you're able to get the extension hammered out. In those cases, though, sometimes you have to quote unquote overpay to coax the player into bypassing free agency. But yeah, that's the main difference. Whereas go ahead. On a young
guy, the team gets the benefit of probably underpaying him. Like if he's still under team control and he signs an extension, but Braves. A guy going into free agency who's already established, you pay the premium for keeping him out of free agency.
Right. In this scenario, specifically with Skubal, the Dodgers would be negotiating against Scott Boris's best guess at how high he could possibly drive the bidding in free agency.
And so he might say $500 million.
Yeah, exactly. They'd be negotiating against the theoretical of how well Scott Boras could do his job. That's a tough thing to negotiate against. And Boras has proven that he can bring teams to pretty high totals in free agency. So the only way this happens is if the Dodgers not only meet, but probably exceed the highest projection that not even like writers and algorithms, that they'd have to exceed the highest projection that Scott Boras personally feels. And that's going to be pretty dang high. So that's why I'd set it low. And like I kind of mentioned earlier too, I personally am not even totally sure that the Dodgers will want to go that high. So I don't even think that this is necessarily just a whether Skubal's open to it thing. I think that there's reason to be cautious with any pitcher contract these days, but especially with Skubal, with the high octane stuff that he has, with the elbow procedure earlier this year. Even though he's back on the mound, like that's not something that doesn't matter. And there would absolutely be a lot of risk to giving Tarik Skubal $400 million. That's just kind of the nature of the pitcher thing. The Dodgers gave Yoshinobu Yamamoto a record-breaking pitcher contract. That was $325 million, and that was when he was 25 years old. Like that was a much easier contract to give out there than Tarik Skubal heading into his age 30 season and talking about money that's probably going to exceed Yamamoto's contract. That's a pretty risky deal, and the Dodgers would probably be definitely cautious of it, and the rest of baseball would especially have to be really thinking hard about. For the Dodgers, they have a lot of these mega contracts. For the rest of baseball, a lot of teams can only afford maybe one of these sorts of deals. And so I think that for a lot of teams, they'd have to think real hard about whether Skubal is the guy, a pitcher in general, is the place that they would want to put that super high salary that they can't afford more than one of them.
Yeah. Another
Bruce, on one question, like any thought that it could potentially, I say 0%, but I might have said that about Kyle Tucker in the winter too. Chances that Boras and Skubal do a 2 to 4 year type of deal with opt-outs to say like 50, 60 million a year, similar to what Kyle Tucker did with maybe just not the Dodgers, but any team, and gets him back on the market at a, still relatively in his prime.
It would really surprise me. I think in free agency, that would require a market like Kyle Tucker's had that was just significantly below what they expected and projected. From an extension standpoint, you don't have the possibility of a market just being dead still like Tucker had. So I just don't really see any way that could happen. And for Skubal's perspective specifically, I think like when you're talking about Kyle Tucker, makes sense for him because at least heading into this year as a position player, you can project and have a better idea of where he's going to be in those couple of years. And you can, with a little bit safer of a projection, say that he was going to be in a place to opt out and then sign another really big contract. Obviously this year hasn't gone well, so who knows? But for the position player side, you're thinking just about projecting performance mostly. From the pitcher side, you're basically thinking about injury. That's what it all comes down to. Yeah. Probably even more than the performance projection thing. You're just talking about injury because at that point you're leaving a lot of money on the table, taking the short-term risk when one elbow surgery completely obliterates the entire thing. And so I don't think that it makes really any sense from a pitcher perspective if you're just trying to make the most amount of total dollars you can to take that sort of a deal. It's just too big a risk.
Related to all this, Hepatitis says, how confident are you guys the Dodgers will extend Skubal either this season or before the December 1st lockout to grandfather it in? Anthony, you mentioned you wondered, will the owners potentially, look at each other and say, hey, nothing big before the CBA expires and we lock these guys out. I hadn't thought about that. I do think that there's a decent likelihood. So does that, in your estimation, then rule out, let's say, I know that we don't think an extension is happening during the season anyway. So let's say it gets to the off season, no matter what, there is, going to be roughly a month from when the World Series ends to the lockout or the CBA expiring in December 1st. Do you think that there's a chance that the Dodgers maybe, buck the trend and really upset baseball at that point?
I don't think so, because I think that any big business like that could break the ownership line. And that's going to be important to them. Like if somebody goes, well, to hell with this, I don't care about the salary cap, I'm going to sign Tarik Skubal to a $50 million a year deal. That really puts a dent in the argument that owners are trying to make about spending. And it gives leverage to, I think, the players union to look at that and say, see, there are owners who are down to do this. All this stuff that you're hearing is BS, basically. They're lying. And, what they're saying they care about is not what they care about. And they know that having players like this and signing players like this is good for their bottom line. Those players, when you look at it like a valuation, could be seen as assets, not liabilities. Like the same way Ohtani is with the Dodgers. If they were to sell the team tomorrow, Ohtani, who is, owed all that deferred money, isn't seen as a liability. He's seen as an asset because he's making this team money and he's selling tickets. And so with all of that, I think if they were to sign Skubal in that window, it could have that kind of ramification. And so I don't think any owner would do it.
And ultimately, too, it's important to remember that even though the Dodgers are the poster child of what MLB is supposedly attacking and trying to stop, the competitive balance, all of that, the Dodger owners are still on the owner's side. And most of what the league is negotiating into the next CBA is still going to benefit the Dodger owners, where a salary cap might drag down whatever. I don't think that'll be there, but they're arguing for it, would drag down supposedly the Dodger competitiveness, that kind of thing. You could say it's anti-Dodger. Most of the things that they're going to be arguing for in the next CBA from the owner side are stuff that the Dodger owners are on board to with. So it would take a lot for them to break that picket line along with the other owners.
Yeah, and it would be, you could make a case that it is collusion. It's just incredibly hard to prove unless you find a paper trail of like Rob Manfred sent 30 emails to every owner and said, hey, this is what we're doing. And I don't think they're dumb enough to do that. So it is technically, but it's hard to prove.
Bruce, and that's a great point you brought up about the Dodgers ownership. Mark Walter, I believe it was with the LA Times either early this year or late last year, and it may have been with Bill Shaken, if I remember correctly. He himself said the Dodgers can't win the World Series every year. That would not be good. So that they as much as they are competitive and certainly do want to win as often as possible, he is, as you said, is still on the ownership side.
Yeah, I mean, dynasties are good for sports, but like pure domination over like eight titles in 10 years, that would eventually at some point not be good for the sport.
And it would be terrible for the Dodgers' success to position themselves from the ownership perspective against all the other 29 teams, because those other 29 teams, if that were to happen, would say, we're never doing business with the Dodgers again. To hell with baseball operations like that. There would be a war waged against the Dodgers if it was just LA that broke that sort of unwritten owner rule, unfortunately.
Sticking on the Tarik Skubal front, H. Garcia wants to know, since it was reported that Skubal wanted to sign with the Dodgers, did that discourage other teams from making a competitive offer aside from the Brewers and Rays?
I don't remember if it was H. Garcia who asked it last night, but we got a very similar question to this last night, and Daniel and I touched on it. I think it could have had an impact, but I think for the teams that were really going to be in on him, I don't think it would have, because a team like the Brewers knew they weren't going to sign him in free agency anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure how much that swayed, and I think nothing against Bob Nightingale, but even the way it was written, it almost was presented as more of like theorizing, and not like he didn't cite like according to sources close to Skubal, according to industry. Like it was kind of vague in general. So it was almost like, is this a hunch, or is this like there are rumblings of this being out there? But yeah, I mean, I don't know how much impact it
Jake the Panda asked us that last night. He just confirmed in the chat.
Every front office in baseball was approaching this negotiation that you're trading for the rental, because that's the only way to do it, and that includes the Dodgers.
Yeah. All right, let's see what we have here. Bruce, I'll come to you. GI wants to know odds that Tibbs or Ward are still in the organization after Monday.
I would say the odds are definitely on the side that at least one of them are gone. The only way that I could possibly see both of them still being in the organization is, like I mentioned earlier, if the Dodgers traded Alex Call and decided that they thought that it would be okay to bring Ward up and leave Tibbs in AAA to play a whole lot of first base and DH and then clear up enough room. But that AAA roster is kind of stacked with outfielders. It's not just Tibbs and Ward. They've got Alec Thomas down there now. Zach Earhart is still in the organization. And so there's like, it kind of needs to be freed up quite a bit for the guys that the Dodgers want to move up to be able to do that. So I definitely would think that it's likely one of them are gone. I think Tibbs would probably have more trade value right now, just given his age and everything. Shipping out Ward would be very interesting to me in terms of what the Dodgers could get back, because he's a lot older, doesn't really have any reason to be in AAA. For most teams, I would imagine internally would view him as a guy that could immediately be a perfectly fine big league average platoon guy to plug into a corner outfield spot. That's not the kind of player that teams are going to trade a lot for. I would expect that if they traded Ward alone, I'd imagine they could hope to get back like a teenager or somebody in the lower minor leagues that they really like, and it wouldn't be a lot more than that. Tibbs, I imagine if they moved him, I think if the Dodgers could find a team externally that views James Tibbs and would pay for James Tibbs like he's a top 100 caliber prospect, a guy of 50 future value or higher, I think the Dodgers would take that. Tibbs is a good prospect, and his contact quality has been very good in AAA, but there's a lot of swing and miss that worries me. I think has worried other people to where I haven't had my list finalized, but he wasn't going to be in the top 10 of my list coming up here. So if the Dodgers found a team that was willing to, that still viewed Tibbs like I think some people do, just because the numbers that he's put up in AAA this year, and really wanted to buy in to the contact quality, then I think that should be something they would totally want to investigate, because that's an easy move to do. Of they get a little bit more back than they would from trading Ward, and they'd free up the space for Sirota and DePaula to move up.
All right, we have a little bit of a backlog here of questions, and I want to make sure that we get to all of them. So I might not go to Anthony and Bruce for every single one, but between the three of us, your question will get answered. And we have a huge audience with us here tonight, so we want to thank you guys again for joining us live on the Dodger Blue 1958 YouTube channel. As you can see, we are in the question and answers portion of our show. So if you have one, just start it with the word question in all caps, and we are getting to as many of them as we can. As of now, what has come in will definitely be answered. And remember, doesn't need to be baseball. If you want to take us off topic at all, we're certainly happy to entertain and answer those as well. Our guy BL Boyd says, looking back, should we have treated the 7th through 9th innings differently on Friday, given that Yamamoto went 8 innings and we still replaced Sheehan with trash today? What was the point of it all? Anthony, I know like there's some discussion amongst our staff of pitching decisions over the weekend. Do you feel like Friday was a bullpen game? So I know like that was it Cole Irvin who was saddled with taking the brunt of that one?
Yeah.
I mean, so it's hard. I guess it's hard to sort of critique.
He might be thinking too of Thursday with bringing Diaz in with the 4-run lead. Just speculate. That was the one that we were all talking about quite a bit.
Got it. Anthony, I mean, any strong feelings on the pitching over this weekend?
Not really particularly on Friday, but I think Friday was a product of weird decisions earlier in the week. And then Yamamoto going 8, also a little bit weird. The Robleski pitch count stuff has been a little inconsistent. Pitching Diaz on back-to-back days. Yeah. Right when he comes back. They did that early in the season too, remember? Like they put him in a back-to-back in a non-safe situation. It was like, what the hell are you doing?
And wasn't it raining too in one of those games? I think in the second.
Right, yeah. And yeah, they did it again, and then they were like, oh, he's down for the next 2 days. And it was like, then why throw him in that? Yeah. Some of Doc's pitching moves this last week have been weird, is putting it probably kindly. But yeah, beyond that, I don't think it's a huge issue, but yeah, it was a weird one.
Yeah. All right, let's see. What do we have here? Sorry, I'm trying to leave some of the off-topic ones for later and not. Serious Drama wants to know, what is the likelihood that Tucker opts out of his 3-year deal early? I mean, at this rate, the likelihood is absolutely 0%. If he goes on to... Go ahead.
If the season ended today and this was year 2, sure, it's 0%. I would say right now it's still greater than 50% that he's going to opt out.
What?
And I would say it's probably 60% that he doesn't play the full 4 years. Matt, here's where I have a problem with that logic. And it's not just you. Like I see this all over the place.
Right.
people assume that this guy cannot improve ever, and that the season ends now and the opt-out is now. The opt-out is at the end of next season. And then there's another one at the end of the season after that. So if you truly believe that Kyle Tucker is going to be a league average hitter, then sure. I don't. I think he's going to be better over the rest of this contract, however long it ends up being. I think he's going to be better than a league average hitter. Call me crazy if you want to, but if he has a pretty good postseason, let's say, and then he gets back to normal Kyle Tucker standards next season, he's opting out, I think. Because I agree. I think he can get more than $120 million out on the open market. Now, it might take him a 4-year deal again or something like that, but I think the totality of that money can be greater than $120 million.
The question of all of this, sorry, Matthew.
Go. I'll just add real quick. Anthony, I agree with all that. My stance is I'm not expecting much from Kyle Tucker at this point. Right. And so as we sit here today, my answer is 0%. I would 100% do agree with you, though, Anthony. If he goes on a heater to end this season, if he plays well next year, then yes, I could see him opting out early at that point. Bruce, go ahead.
The question of all of this is basically, instead of saying what's the likelihood he opts out, it's basically just asking what's the likelihood that he bounces back towards Kyle Tucker standards. And I am not in the camp of saying I don't think that it's a 50%. Like I'm discouraged by Kyle Tucker. It's definitely not impossible, though. And I don't even think he has to bounce back all the way to his regular baseline. If he gets back somewhere close to it at all, or even just to like, if he posts an 800 OPS next year,
he's an all-star.
I think it's a possibility that he opts out just for a longer contract and security. Because if he continues to be anywhere close to this right now and went through the entire 4-year deal, then he's not getting nothing in terms of any real look or any extended contract. So the only way that I could see if he doesn't go all the way back to his norm is if he just wants to say, instead of the $120 million for the final 2 years, if he wanted to try and target a 6-year, $150 million deal because he truly thinks that that's going to be the better financial option, maybe. But I don't see it as the likely thing right now.
And like I said, right now, like he obviously would have to bounce back. But the other thing is it's not a 3-year deal; it's a 4-year deal, and there's 2 opt-outs in it. So the real question is, what are the chances he fulfills the entire contract?
Yeah.
And our guy Aaron Vaughn is not worried because he's predicting a big October for Kyle Tucker. And if you're only listening via podcast and can't see, not watching, I'm not speaking in hyperbole. Aaron Vaughn, who I know is with us pretty often and was one of our longtime listeners, says, I think Tucker will ball in the playoffs. So unless he's being sarcastic, which Aaron, if you're being sarcastic, let us know. But otherwise, I think he's bullish on Tucktober is what Aaron has officially launched here as we sit here on August 2nd, 2026. Aaron is the founder of Tucktober. Remains to be seen how big that ship grows to be. All right, let's see what else we have. Stick with Kyle Tucker. JRM 2254 wants to know if Tucker continues to stink, is there a possibility he hits in the 9th spot in October? I don't think so. I don't think the Dodgers are going to treat, a veteran and look, if whether you think it's warranted or not, somebody signed to the caliber contract that he is, they're not going to drop him down that low. I'll give you guys a chance for quick thoughts. Anthony, you go first, and then Bruce, as I'm looking here for some more questions.
I don't think it's a possibility.
Yeah. I think that you're going to get to a point, if the entire lineup gets healthy, that there's going to be guys hitting uncomfortably low, like maybe 8th or not 7th for Tucker, but it seems unlikely it gets all the way down.
And if he's really that bad that you're dropping him to 9th for like lack of performance, that's not a great spot to put him, because you want somebody who can get on base before Ohtani comes up.
There's going to be somebody batting 9th that it feels like shouldn't be batting 9th if the lineup is healthy, though. Like if it's Teoscar Hernandez, if it's Mookie Betts, like I don't think anything is hard to look at. And there's going to be, if everybody's healthy, there's going to be somebody batting 9th that it feels like absolutely shouldn't be batting 9th, but no, they'll figure it out.
This one's from Jay. I don't know if it's necessarily for us. It seems like it's more for the audience, but he says, some complained about bets, tried being the Mets or Padres. They splash money and make moves, but don't win it all. How about that? I think us Dodgers fans are being way too spoiled, but then he adds a question mark.
You know what's a worse contract than Mookie? Xander.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Machado.
Well, that's not
That
looking
one-
great either.
That one too.
That one too. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, Jay, you're on to something there. It could certainly be worse.
That
Bad Beats
Xander
wants-
Bogaerts. Sorry, real quick. That Xander. I'll do this in one sentence. That Xander Bogaerts contract was a disaster the moment it was signed, and it is so not surprising to see it's
The
bad now.
Padres negotiated totally against themselves. No one else was giving Xander that
It
deal.
was the moment that contract got signed, it was a joke, and the idea that they might have to trade like this offseason if they wind up trading Mason Miller in order to get out from under that contract is just an insane failure as an organization.
Bad Beats wants to know, will Sheehan be dealt before tomorrow's deadline? I mean, short of a stunning, like, this sounds redundant, but it would take a stunning surprise. Yeah.
Who in baseball, after seeing his start today, would value Sheehan at the level that the Dodgers would need in order to part with him right now? Nobody. So no chance.
And that's what we didn't get a chance to get into it because our show has obviously, as we have cleared the 2-hour mark here tonight. There were intentions to discuss, River Ryan or Emmet Sheehan, which would have been better for the Dodgers to keep. And obviously, it's not that simple because maybe the Tigers weren't interested in Sheehan, to Bruce's point. So there is a conversation there to be had. But what always gets me with these is fans complain about how terrible a player is. And because he's so terrible, he needs to be traded. And so then the question is, well, if you think he is so bad and worthless and calling him names, what team do you think is going to want a player like that? So that's always,
how about our worst player for your all-star player? Let's do that deal. How come the front office hasn't done that yet? Mike
Taylor's asking if we're ready to go all night. No, we are getting through these questions. We're near the end here because also we haven't mentioned it yet.
Snacks.
We should have had the what was FIFA doing? The hydration breaks.
Oh yeah.
We needed one of those at the 1 hour mark. We're also going to be doing a live show tomorrow for the trade deadline. So, if we weren't doing the live show tomorrow, yes, we would have stayed with you guys all night into the morning up to the 3 p.m. deadline.
Just the three of us. Nobody else at Dodger.
Nobody else. Yeah, you don't need to
No
hear
relief. No relief. We didn't need relief help. CG.
Let's see. What else do we have? JRM wants to know, Bruce, who's going to be the right-handed high leverage arm in the bullpen come October?
Sound the trumpets. Edwin Diaz is for sure the number one guy in the bullpen.
Okay, there we go. Do you have a second option? I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. A second option since Diaz is obviously the closer?
I mean, there's a possibility. I think it winds up being Roki Sasaki as the number 2 guy. That they are going to have some options. The right-handed side of the bullpen is not as surefire as it had looked earlier in the year. Obviously, Kyle Hurt got optioned. Will Klein struggled a little bit. Edgardo Enriquez isn't doing as well. I think Evan Phillips is for sure in that group too. He's probably ahead of Roki right now in terms of who I'd project to be the high leverage option.
Anthony, I'll go to you for this one. James wants to know, am I the only one that thinks the Dodgers needed Skubal and this was not a vanity purchase? He basically replaces Ohtani, and we can't make assumptions about Snell and or Glass now.
No, I don't think they needed him. I think he is a luxury. Even if one of those 3 guys doesn't come back, Ohtani, Snell, or Glass now, I still don't think it was a need. I still think their rotation depth come October is as good or better than anybody else that's going to run a team out there.
For the sake of balance, as I always bring to the show, it was a need for me, and it was a need because of Ohtani's knee. I'm skeptical as to how much he's going to be pitching in October. Do you want to add something, Bruce?
Yeah, I was just going to say real quick, I don't think need is the specific word I'd use just because the Dodgers were going to have the best roster still. But regardless of the definition, boosting your World Series odds by 5.5% is very significant.
Yeah, that's real. That's a lot.
Bruce, this one's for you. Thomas wants to know if CJ Abrams is in play. He says, move Edmund in center field and Pajes can play in the corner to give Teo or Tucker a break. Recent struggles of the offense, just think they may want to add. He does have years of control.
Scott, if you're watching this, please mute for the next 30 seconds. No, the Nationals are going to be holding on to him, and the only way that I could see Abrams moving is to a team that really, really, really needs and wants him. The only team that I think is interesting there, maybe Boston, if they are willing to trade Franklin Arias for C.J. Abrams, maybe. But I don't think the Dodgers have a spot or have a reason to be bidding super high for that guy right now. He's a bad shortstop, so he's not going to move Mookie off shortstop. And at that point, it's like, what are you doing it for?
Bruce, not the Mookie's name is taboo tonight. You can't say you say his name and the show is just going to go haywire.
They like Pages in center field too.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. There's no reason to move Pages off center field.
JJK101 wants to know, with the number of guys we have injured, you think they should make them do Yama's mobility training because that man has a rubber arm. So I know Mookie started doing some of it. I don't know. I can't remember if there are any other player. I mean, sure. Like the problem is you need to, I think, be convicted in making a switch to something like this. I also don't think it's as easy as just do what Yamamoto does and your body's going to be the way Yamamoto's is. He's been training like this pretty much probably his entire life, at least his professional career. And so are there maybe benefits you can start to see, a little bit here and there? Yes. Will it guarantee, if a pitcher, if Blake Snell chooses to start doing it or Tyler Glasnow, that they're also going to have a rubber arm and they can go back-to-back days in the World Series? No, unfortunately, it's not that simple, because I can promise you if it were, the Dodgers would have put together an official manual for all their players and they would all be doing Yamamoto's training regimen to stay healthy and be available. Last three here, guys, we have reached we're closing in on the finish line here. And they're all off topic, so you are being warned. We will start with Justin, who wants to know, Anthony, how does it feel about sharing a first name with the Hollywood lifestyle? And this is, of course, a reference to good old Anthony Rendon.
Yeah. I think I have more friends than the other guy.
There we go. Bruce, coming to you. Dodger Blue 82 wants to know, any reason why Eduardo Quintero was removed from today's minor league game? Is he next to be traded?
He got pinch hit for, and Great Lakes was playing a doubleheader today, and then he was back in the starting lineup for game 2. So it had nothing to do with that. The Athletic had reported last week that it was DePaula that was for sure off the table, and Quintero also was not being included in any kind of negotiations. So he's not getting moved. I think the Dodgers really, really love Quintero for potentially plus defense and center field as the projection on top of his combination of he doesn't chase and he doesn't swing and miss in the zone. There's a little bit of the approach needs to be ironed out a little bit with he's very passive in the zone, takes a lot of strikes. So that has to get worked on, but he's 19 and the data is absolutely crazy for what he's done in high A this year. You factor in the defense and it makes a lot of sense that the Dodgers do not want to move him before he's a guy that I think there's a legitimate tool set for, like, he could be a top 3 prospect in baseball in these next couple of years.
Yeah, there was a brief, 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes of speculation and people on Twitter today when Quintero was removed from the game. Anthony, going to you for this one, because you, out of all of us, you certainly watched the most Giants baseball. Yonggi wants to know, says a rise would be perfect in the 2 spot behind Ohtani. Is there any way the Dodgers could trade for him, maybe do a 3-team trade to do so?
Oh, I'm sure they could. Absolutely, they could. Would they? No. Should they? Absolutely not. They don't need him. His bat's okay now, but the defense has fallen off a cliff this season. As the season has gone on, he's back to being a bad defender. No need for him. Like, his offense isn't like, I know, like, people might see the average and think like, oh, good hitter. As far as impact goes on a lineup, it's not very much. And when you're a bad defender, there's a reason why he had to sign a 1-year deal.
Yeah. Speaking of the 2 spot in the lineup, maybe we should get Blake to do a solo live show with everybody to share his thoughts on lineup construction and which orders matter most. And you see Bruce and Anthony, their reaction, because if you guys could only see some of the stuff Blake was texting us today, you would laugh to Bruce, No Mo Splitter wants to know, will Mike Sirota be better than Gavin Lux?
God, I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lux created a little career for himself, but it wouldn't be crazy hard to clear that bar if you're able to be an everyday big leaguer. Sirota is not a sure thing. He has some in-zone width that I think is the only reason that the Dodgers would be valuing Eduardo Quintero over Sirota right now. But my goodness, has he been insanely good? When I said Quintero doesn't chase, Sirota really does not chase. Like, he has the best approach. It's up there with DePaula for the best in the system. He does not expand at all, and he also does a decent job swinging at strikes. So he's got a big league approach and power that has really played this year, gap to gap and over the fence. I don't know if he's going to be an everyday center fielder or if he has to move to a corner. That's kind of up for debate, but the profile is there for an everyday big leaguer to be a really good guy, as long as the in-zone fastball whiff doesn't suddenly become a huge issue in the major leagues.
Is Sirota one of their draft picks, or is he a trade guy?
Both. He was drafted out of high school by the Dodgers back in 2021 in, I think the 16th round. Didn't sign, went to Northeastern. Reds took him in the 3rd round after he entered that spring with first-round pedigree, had some issues with timing and stuff in his draft year. Took him in the 3rd round by the Reds. Didn't even play a professional game, and then the Dodgers got him. So they stayed committed to their guy.
Yeah, they said, give us our guy back. That's right. Yeah. I forgot that was his story. All right, final two. Jake the Panda wants to know, what do I keep in my car that Blake wants to break into it so often? So what I have in there Pokemon. No, Anthony, that's disrespectful to me. Come on, I'm not a Pokemon guy. There's obviously an Iron Man helmet in there and some other Avengers collectibles that Blake is trying to get to, because he knows that is far and away superior to his Star Trek love that he is obsessed with. Last one. And it's fitting because we are now at the 2-hour and 17-minute mark. Don Kim wants to know, after tonight, will Anthony be having some more 1942?
I had some already. So probably not after this show. I had some already. But yeah, last night I will say post-show, I definitely had more than one.
There we go. Celebration last night. All right. That's going to do it for tonight. A big thank you to everybody who joined us for what became, frankly, an unexpected bit of a marathon episode. I feel like some of it is my fault. I tend to be long-winded sometimes, and I drag our shows out. But I think tonight also I can't take blame for this one. I think there was some interesting conversation here at the beginning. And if you guys missed it, rewind it to the front. I'm sure we're going to get plenty of comments about more Mookie Betts discourse. And like we said, we understand you guys want to vent, share your thoughts. That's what this is for. We also then want to have productive and informed conversations with you all. And I think we did ultimately get there as this show continued to progress. So big thank you to everybody for sticking with us throughout tonight. And a big thank you again to the support you guys have continued to show us. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we crossed 103,000 subscribers over the past week on our channel. So we just continue to keep growing. And we appreciate all the support you guys have given us. As a reminder, if you're on YouTube, we also have our Dodger Blue 1958 podcast. So I know Southern California, there's certainly plenty of traffic. So if you happen to miss us live, maybe listen to the podcast. If you are a podcast person, maybe come check out our YouTube channel. Again, it's Dodger Blue 1958. We have these live shows. We also have post-game, pre-game interviews from Dodger Stadium and some road trips that we go on as well. We covered Clayton Kershaw's back-to-school bash giveaway over the weekend, so we have that video up, an interview with him. We're going to be putting together also a behind-the-scenes video of that as well, so make sure you're subscribed, ring the notification bell. You'll get notified once that is live. I mentioned we are planning on doing a live trade deadline special on Monday. Considering that the Tarik Skubal trade already happened, maybe we start that at 2:30 since the deadline is 3, and then sometimes stuff sort of trickles in. But we're looking at probably 2 p.m., 2:30 Pacific as sort of starting that, with the caveat of, hey, maybe if there's something earlier. We mentioned Alex Call, Eric Lauer being possible trade candidates, maybe Ryan Ward. Perhaps we'll go live, a little bit earlier. In the meantime, a reminder that Vince is doing his unplugged shows every Monday through Friday, starting at 9 a.m. Pacific. Considering, guys, we have gone this long, I know Scott likes to give you an opportunity for final thoughts, so I will also turn the floor over tonight. Anthony, you first, and then Bruce, you can close us out.
Yeah, look, I know the results on the scoreboard weren't great, but this is one of the best weekends of the season for Dodgers.
That's a banger right there. I don't think I can follow that. I've already forgotten about the weekend. I'll say that. I'm excited to watch Tarik Skubal pitch on Tuesday.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, it's unfortunate. There's still
television for Dodger fans.
Yeah, definitely. Still one more game Monday. Series opener against the Cubs. Dodgers going out on the road, and then as you guys mentioned, Tarik Skubal is doing his Dodgers debut on Tuesday, which lines up great for us because it fits in. I think that's why they did it. Honestly, they know that we go live Tuesday nights, and they said, "Hey, let's get Skubal his first start with the team on a Tuesday, so these guys can recap it right after." So we will be live with you for that night as always. So once again, truly a big thank you to everybody. This was a fun show, and we will see you guys next time.